It's Wednesday, August 24th, 2022, 6:08 p.m. This workshop of the Board of Commissioners is called to order. City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Mayor Hendricks,
Here.
Commissioner Tagliarini,
Here.
Commissioner Kerr,
Here.
Commissioner Hudson.
Here.
For the record, Commissioner and Vice Mayor Andrews is absent for the meeting.
Thank you, ma'am. Was there something a little more in that dinner drink?
I was thinking that. It confused me.
First is public comment. If there's anyone here that would like to make a public comment on anything that is not on the agenda, please step up to the podium, state your name and address. You have 3 minutes to speak. Okay, topics for discussion. First is a presentation by Mr. Mike Twitty, Pinellas County Property Appraiser.
Thank you, Mayor. Good to see all the commissioners out today, this evening. I know it's been a long day of meetings, but we're going to try to answer some of the questions that were relayed to our office. And I know it's budget time for you guys, so hopefully we can shed a little light on some of the breakdown of values within your jurisdiction, and obviously throw any questions you may have as we go through the presentation here. It's pretty short and sweet. I'm going to jump into value trends. I'd like to typically show this out of the gate so you can see the last peak, the valley during the Great Recession, and then the rise. The difference in these bars, the blue bars depict just market value as determined by our office. This is just specifically aggregate values within Madeira Beach. And then the gold bars are taxable value. So the difference between the two are a function of your assessment caps and your exemptions. That's what creates that difference between the two. So obviously the taxable value is the number you're most focused on. That number times your millage rates results in taxes. So you can look down here, you can see, and this is in billions of dollars, so you've got about $2.66 billion of just market value in the city here. About $1.79 billion of that is taxable. And then this is reflecting new construction from last year, which was about $20 million in new construction, which that's what the red line is there. That's new construction. So the breakdown, this was one of the questions that had been asked of me, was the breakdown between commercial and residential. So obviously you're, definitely heavy on the residential side in your community. You can see down here, you've got almost 3,500 residential properties as opposed to 475 commercial. And this commercial count, keep in mind, also includes other things that don't fall really within residential. So it might have your government buildings and things like that in there as well.
Excuse
which
me.
Most of those are not taxable.
Will we be able to have access to this presentation?
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
Mike,
Yes.
I hate to interrupt you, but it would be a perfect time. The city manager brought up a point, we asked this question to him earlier, and he made a point that the residential also includes a lot of condo, which is the VRBO, and the commercial, so I don't know if you get into that in your presentation, but I at least wanted to bring up that point.
Yes, it does include a lot. I mean, I think the breakdown between single family and condo are fairly equal in the numbers, in the count. Value-wise, they're going to be a little bit different, and obviously wherever you have waterfront, it's going to obviously swing a lot higher in that regard. But you can see, taxable value here for commercial, about $300 million, as opposed to about $1.4 billion on the residential side. Keep in mind, anybody that's if it's commercial property, then it falls under the non-homestead cap, so any of those parcels can rise 10% per year, their assessed value. without, without a change of ownership. But they also pay on the full just market value piece for school taxes. So that, obviously, that's not coming to you all, but just to make you aware, that is the one millage line that is not exempt and doesn't fall under the assessed value. It still goes to full just value. So here's your breakdown between homesteaders and non-homesteaders for the residential piece that we were looking at. Non-homesteaders is about 66%, so 2/3 of your property owners in the residential category out here are not homesteaders. Just to give you some perspective there, countywide, homesteaders are 60%. And then they had also asked about some historical millage information. So this is, again, this is the city on the blue line. So that's the city's millage over time, red off this left axis. And the gold bar depicts the aggregate for all the total millages for real estate within the district. So you can see how that's moved over time. And where it's typically come down is because of rollbacks in certain millage lines. For example, the state schools, Swift Mud, any of those state millage lines, those typically do roll back, which can create some of those differences. And then this question was asked as well about how is the millage rate the same for tangible and real estate? So would somebody paying on a business tangible account pay the same amount off of value? And the answer is no. They're slightly different. You can see here, tangible in this jurisdiction is about roughly $1.5 million less. And you can see why it's different, and that's because PSTA and EMS do not go against the tangible number, so they don't get added in for tangible. And there are some other millage lines in some other jurisdictions, but obviously they don't apply here in Madeira Beach. Any questions on that? Okay. And another question we had was, how much do property taxes contribute to the operating revenue? And we actually pulled this, you probably were looking at some of these numbers earlier today in your budget workshop, and I believe that's where we got some of these. But so ad valorem taxation results in about 36% of the operating revenue for the beach. And then you have all these other various revenue lines. And then that breaks down as follows. And of course, we're going to get you all this too. So let's look at a little bit the residential market. We all know it's been on a tear last few years. So no big surprises there. Now, keep in mind, these numbers are typically smoothed out more when you're looking at a larger jurisdiction or looking at countywide. We've got a few little jumps in here. Some of that's because of the number of the sample size. So you can see here from 2019 to 2020, the median sale price per square foot jumped 22%. And then for last year, it actually jumped 43%. Within the beach area here. And this, this year to date, for the first half of 22, it's already at 24%. So even though the sales pace has started to slow, buyers are getting a little more persnickety. We've seen asking prices recalibrated and some expectations lowered and adjusted. We still aren't seeing a big dip. The sales numbers are in actual dollars are still holding, and supply is rising slowly. It's creeping up as demand has dropped down a little bit, but we're starting to see a little more traditional transactional process, not as many cash buyers lined up, people willing to close literally overnight and waive inspections and all of those things. We're actually seeing inspections happen again, which is a good thing because that's when you shake out the condition of properties, and it starts to pollute our data that we get when we have lots of transactions going on without inspections. So we're actually glad to see the market normalize a little bit. So we're keeping an eye on it, and we'll have to see where we go from here. So any questions on any of that? I'm going to jump into, give you a little overview on some legislation.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump back. You mentioned that the homestead residential is roughly 60%.
Mm-hmm.
And back to my previous comment about the VRBO on the beach
Yes.
and condos, which would fall into that residential area. If you have a condo, and let's say you live in it 6 months and a day, but you still rent the condo, does that meet the homestead requirement? Or if you rent for a week, is that you no longer have the homestead?
So the rental statute, as it stands at present, is if you rent for more than 30 days in 2 consecutive years, then your homestead is in jeopardy. So technically, would allow somebody that if they had a hardship, needed to rent for part of 1 calendar year, they could technically do that as long as they return to that property the next year or stopped renting it the next year. But if they rent in 2 calendar years for more than 30 days, that's the trigger.
No, that's important for a lot of reasons.
Right.
I appreciate you explaining that. Thank you.
Of course. I'm just looking at some notes here. So just backing up the slide where I had the blue bars and the gold bars where you saw just market value and taxable value, that just value, that jumped up 31% for 2022, and the taxable value increase in your jurisdiction here was 15%. So about half of that amount. So some things have happened, some things passed this last legislative session that fall within the ad valorem realm. I just wanted to make you all aware. So there's been a long time exemption that stood at $500 of assessed value, which equates to about $10 in tax savings in most cases for widowers, blind persons, and persons 100% and totally and permanently disabled. The property appraisers were successful in finally getting that moved up. It was already in the state constitution that it could go up to $5,000 of assessed value, but it had been stuck at $500 since 1968, I believe. So it seemed like it was time to recalibrate that a little bit. So now those qualifying people will now get roughly about $100 in savings instead of the $10. So just want to make you guys aware of that. And there was another bill that did pass late in session. I think it actually passed when they came back for one of the special sessions later or earlier this year. But that's an abatement for taxes on a residential dwelling that basically has had a catastrophic event. So this was really triggered by the unfortunate collapse of the Surfside condominium down in South Florida. So what this would do is would create an abatement for taxes if the property is rendered uninhabitable. So we've already had kind of one-off legislation that's occurred in these events for hurricanes. So we've had issues where, property gets wiped out, they name the hurricane, they put it in legislation that if it was the result of this named storm or that named storm, then it would follow this same type of calculation on number of days uninhabitable, and they would prorate the amount of the abatement. So this basically puts it more into more permanence, so they don't have to go back all the time and chase storms. But if they have something that is structurally flawed and has an occurrence like they unfortunately did down in Surfside, this would cover that for that property.
When did that go through, Mike?
That was this year.
Okay.
Yeah, that was actually signed in May. The exemption, that increase to 5,000, that won't take effect until next tax year.
Okay.
So this one here, this is actually going to be Amendment 1 on the ballot. I've talked with several of you on the commission about this over the last year. And this was something that we took actually to the legislature, and fortunately, Speaker Sprouse kind of wrapped his arms around it, really liked it, made it part of his three-legged stool on environmental type issues. And this was one of the pieces that they thought would be a good move to start proactive mitigation measures rather than being reactive, relying on grants, relying on the government to bail people out after the fact. And this actually incentivizes people to make private investment in their homes to voluntarily elevate an existing property or knock it down and rebuild. And what it does is they don't get treated as new construction. They get to keep the value that was there prior to that demolition or that lifting of the property. So one of the things actually Commissioner Hudson and I were talking about is there's starting to be a few more players that are in the lifting of homes game, but there really aren't enough of them. We need more of them that know how to do it, and maybe this will help with some of that cost because those costs seem to be kind of running out of control. But this would provide an incentive for people to go ahead and make that private investment, be proactive about getting a property off the ground, and they would ultimately, the benefit of the value of that home comes back to the jurisdiction. When the property sells, the cap resets. Anything they improve over 110% of that original square footage still goes on as new construction. So if they double the size of the structure, you're still going to have new construction added back over the cap. So other things, the structure can't be condemned before they start the process. We just had to clean up a few loophole type things that might happen where it could potentially be abused, and they cannot change the use of the property. So residential per the Department of Revenue is up to 9 units. So you could have a small multifamily property that could meet this too, that they could actually bring up off the ground, but you cannot change the use. So you couldn't have 9 units, combine all the square footage and build a very large house to try and circumvent the square footage issue. And something else I want to point out, if the home is under 1,500 square feet, you can always build at least up to that 100, or you can always build up to 1,500 square feet. So if it were 800, you're not capped by the 110. You can at least build up to the 1,500. So that will be Amendment 1. We actually also have, and this, by the way, was carried forward by Linda Cheney. Rep. Cheney carried this. We worked together closely on it, so I want to thank her for those efforts, as well as Senator Brandis. And then the additional exemption-related amendment that will be on the ballot is Amendment 3, and that one would provide critical public service workers with an additional $50,000 of homestead exemption. So you can see the list of the people that qualify there. That one gets a little administratively burdensome at our office because these people will have to apply every year because you do have to be full-time. So if it's a part-time teacher, unfortunately, they're not going to qualify. Unfortunately, sometimes teachers are part-time one year and then they're full-time the next year. So we're going to have to deal with the application process on that. But we'll see how this shakes out with the voters in November. And I'm going to wrap up here in a second, but wanted to make sure you guys were aware we have developed a new website at the Property Appraiser's Office. We've moved the domain. It used to be .org. Now it resides at .gov. We're currently running both the old site and the new site in parallel. So the .org site is still standing, but you can go straight to the .gov site, drive the new one. much improved in many ways. The search functionality is much more flexible. You can hit things. It's got kind of a smart fuzzy search. You can even have some misspellings and you'll still usually get where you want to go. I tried spelling dolphin like every conceivable way I could and still was getting the property I was trying to find. So encourage everyone to play with that. Lots of great tools in there, some extra things like comp sales tools, things that didn't exist in the prior site. So we tried to take everything that was in the old site, put it in a more user-friendly manner and bring it forward and make it mobile-friendly. And we think we built the best site in the state, if not the country, with this. So a lot of love and sweat and tears went into this guy. And just to keep you all updated, anybody can go on our website and sign up for our e-newsletters. We have them that cater to homeowners, business owners, and real estate professionals. So every month we send out kind of an e-newsletter blast with timely information that is relevant to the specific user. We also have, obviously, social media. They can follow us on Facebook, and we have a YouTube channel where we publish all of our public education sessions and help videos for the website and all those types of things. And our next public education, we always hold it not far from here, right over in off of 34th Street at 2500, just a little bit north of 22nd Avenue North. I say it's not that far. It probably seems far for you guys, but for me, I'm all over the place, so you're in striking distance here. But our South County Service Center there, we have a great training room, and we invite the public to come in. We do kind of a lunch and learn type thing. Can't always promise what lunch is going to look like. Sometimes it looks like a donut. Sometimes it looks like a real legitimate lunch. So depends on the month and the event. But the next one coming up will be the website tool and navigation session. We'll be hosting that on Thursday, September 8th. And then the following month, we'll be doing our first-time Florida homeowners once again. So every month we change the session. We move them around based on time of year and where we think that the public would be in most of the demand of those particular education sessions. But you can also find those online. Going to leave you guys with important tool. You probably have heard more and more about deed fraud. I don't know if you've witnessed any of it out here on the beaches, but particularly when you have seniors that have a large amount of equity in their properties or literally have it free and clear, you can have people recording fraudulent deeds. They'll forge the deed, put it in their name, and then go take out mortgages against it. And by the time the property owner finds out, unfortunately, a lot of times it's way late in the game, and they got a really big mess to try and untwangle.
Yeah.
The clerk, our Pinellas clerk, Ken Burke, has this free property fraud alert service. We're one of only a handful or so in the state that offer this. So I recommend people sign up for it. It's free. You'll hear a lot of ads online about ones you can pay for, but this one you don't have to. You can go online at the web address here at propertyfraudalert.com, go to the Pinellas drop-down, pick that. All you do is put in your name and your email address. Anything that gets recorded in public records, you'll get an email with the OR book and page link. You can check it out to make sure that that's not you or that that's legitimate. And it could be anything from a notice of commencement to a satisfaction of a mortgage. Obviously, it can be a deed. It can be all of those things. But it's a great way I use it myself. I've used it for several years, and things pop up. I forget that it would even flow through there, and boom, there it is. So it's a great service. If your name's John Smith or John Hendricks, you might get a few more emails than other people. It may not be you, but you can at least check on the other John Hendricks around town and make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. With that, that's all I have for our presentation, but happy to answer any questions.
I have a question on that fraud alert. Is
Sure.
there a national registry of counties or municipalities that offer that service for, just nationwide?
When you go to that particular website, that propertyfraudalert.com, they have a drop down and it'll show the county and the state, and it is across the country, that particular service, but there are different ones. So some cover certain parts of the country and some cover others, is what I'm seeing, because I know there's 7 in Florida that are on that tool, but then I've had several other property appraisers tell me that their clerk has a tool that does that as well. So they must be using a different service provider that is providing that service. So there must be more than one, but I know there aren't a whole lot of them in the state of Florida doing it right now.
Yeah, that's good. Good to know. I mean, you would think that would be a standard
Right.
across the country, but thank you.
Sure,
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it.
no problem. Any other questions? You guys good?
And Mike, could I get a copy of your presentation
Absolutely.
for the record, please?
Yep,
Thank you.
we shall send it to you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you
Mayor,
very much, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
Commissioner, if I
Appreciate
may
it.
just add, yeah, thank you, Mr. Twitty, for coming out. Great presentation, great information. We will make sure everybody gets a copy, but I do encourage everybody who's watching or hears this to go to the website, especially the new one. It's even better than the current one. So,
you.
but lots of good information, everything from, even if you don't own a property, even if you're a renter or live in an apartment complex, it's still good information out there, and particularly to find out more than anything about property taxes, because that's usually the big question from property owners, including businesses. Great information on the site, so thank
Yeah,
you.
and the new site has specific sections just on how to I's and learnabouts, where you can get as deep as you want and learn as much as you want about valuation and how the property tax process works.
Great presentation.
Thank you all.
And Mike, it looks like the weather's going south. If you'd like.
They want me to stay, right?
Well, what I was going to say, we do have some sandwiches in there and drinks. So if you'd like to have dinner here, wait until the rain subsides some.
Appreciate that.
Okay, so
Thank you.
any one of those folks would be glad to point you in that direction.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Well, obviously, there's no one in the chambers tonight for any public comment on this, so we will move on. Next is fiscal year 2023, Pinellas County Sheriff's Office contract for law enforcement.
Thank you, Mayor and Commission. We have with us this evening Captain Mike Liner, who oversees the contract agreements with the cities. Just a very quick overview. We contract, like other cities, with the Pinellas County Sheriffs to provide kind of all of our law enforcement services, from patrol to community policing to code enforcement, school crossing guards, and any and all other law enforcement service that may be needed, including K-9, SWAT, mobile command, special events, et cetera. And I have to tell you, I'm in my essentially 22nd year working in Pinellas County, and I'm extremely impressed almost every day with the work that the Sheriff's Office continues to provide. Do hear lots of comments, lots of accolades from many of our residents, businesses, visitors, even those that may not be behaving as well. At least they still positively comment on their experiences for the most part. So I want to thank Captain Liner and certainly Sheriff Bob Gualtieri for their continued collaboration and cooperation with this. The agreement is pretty much no change other than just the basics for increases from year to year relating to personnel and some equipment costs. But as I mentioned earlier at our budget workshop, I think we've received an enhanced level of services, particularly in our from their Marine unit, rather in working with the derelict abandoned boats. But certainly very responsive, very out in the community. You know, we just went through the 6-month rotation so we have a couple of new deputies, several new deputies on patrol, but just as impressive as the deputies we've been working with in the 8 months I've been here. So, Captain Liner.
Thank you. For those of you I've met before, it's good to see you again. Those I haven't had the pleasure yet, I'm sure we'll meet, but it's nice to see you. I appreciate the introduction. What I plan to do, just I'll run through it real quick, because I know time is a premium these days. But on your schedule, do you have the, or it's not, okay?
Sorry,
They
I'll
have
bring
it?
up. Sorry.
I just want to run through, because sometimes I have questions, and then feel free to answer any of your questions at the end. But just the break, I think it's the last page.
Yep. Yeah, getting, there we go.
And what all that says there is the numbers on the end right there. So on your line item A there, just if anybody's not familiar with it, especially if they're watching or listening, you have
Page 17, sorry.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, it was.
Oh, okay.
Page 17.
You have 2 deputies on the road 24/7. So that's your coverage for the city. And the way they work out that 8 is, we're on 12-hour shift now, excuse me. So it takes 2 shifts to cover a 7-day period, so that makes 4 positions. And then we have a day shift and a night shift, so you multiply that times 2, that gives you your 8. That's where the 8 comes from. You obviously I think you're all aware that you have your 2 CPOs. With all the language in there, you have 1 CPO that does your code, you have 1 CPO that does traditional community policing. I can tell you that over the years, we obviously cross-train them, so they're capable of assisting each other. So what it really boils down to is if one of them's off, then the other one fills in and kind of gives you a 7-day coverage or 6-day coverage type deal. So that's where you get your community special enforcement, those are
Sorry,
CPO.
can I just ask, just
Sure.
for clarity in my part?
Yes.
So the community policing deputy would not be on patrol? Or is he there I mean, are there 4 people during the day? Is it code enforcement, community policing, and then 2 patrol, or
So you always have 2.
always have 2?
And then your CPOs work different hours. So you could have both of them working on a day shift, so you'd have 4 in the city. But they're technically, their primary stuff is boiling down to code enforcement, special projects, putting out fires. But theoretically, you could have all 4. You could have the 2 that are always in the city.
Right.
You could have your 2 CPOs working. Then we have a squad that covers multiple cities down here, so you can have the sergeant in here as well. And you can have the corporal in here. And that doesn't even count everybody going through the city up and down, or like they're going to Reddington, they work in Reddington, coming down across the bridge and going up there.
Got it.
But you will always have 2 in
Right,
the
we
city.
always have the 2.
Yes, sir.
Great, thanks.
You're welcome. Then just moving on to your school crossing guards, you all stumped me like 4 years ago on asking where the guards were. So they're at Doomy in American Legion and Doomy in 150, which I have the school crossing guards. So that was good, you guys got me.
Yeah, honestly, I was surprised that the city paid for the
Yeah,
school
that's the other
crossing
question I get
guards.
frequently.
Yeah.
So the way I answer that is there's nothing that says there has to be a school crossing guard program in the county or region or whatever. It's just that if you do have one, then it has to abide by the state. We got to follow the state rules. So we have a program throughout the county, obviously, and I have 192 posts that we're responsible to fill each day. And if anybody, we just raised the rate to $22 an hour. If you know anybody looking for some extra cash, 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour in the afternoon.
Hey, I've got some time.
Good extra cash. Anyways, you can imagine with 192 posts, we're always revolving people through. Great program, great people though. The vehicle cost on there, this is all fiscal numbers. So they calculated by the 8 people that from that line item B there, and then your 2 CPOs. And those are a study that they did on how many miles on average that they drive. Your supervision, I kind of alluded to. What it is you share your sergeant and the supervisory cost across multiple cities. So from Bel Air Beach, Bel Air Shore, North Reddington, here, near the last one, those, you all share that same supervisor. So you don't pay the full cost, you just pay a small portion of it. And then you have a school crossing guard supervisor cost in there. And the equipment, they just add the 2 together, and they have a calculation based on the number of positions. And then the AIC was a study they did years ago. So it's basically, that's all inclusive of everything, as Mr. Gomez referenced, the boats and dogs and helicopters, and some of that's countywide, some of that's the city, but whatever you need, one of my roles, the sheriff put me in here, is to make sure the city gets it. So that's kind of a quick rundown, and then if I have any other questions that I can answer for you, I'd be more than happy to answer or make some up. I kid.
So, one thing I did want to say is Deputy Snyder and
Deputy Moran?
Yes, I had a brain freeze there. Those guys are so good. You know, the community loves them. They do a great job, and everybody is so satisfied with the work y'all do here. And with getting the boats out of the bay over there, you don't know how appreciated that is by the whole community. So, and what city of 4,000 people has a helicopter, you know? That's so,
I
but
appreciate
no, I wanted to thank y'all for your service.
I appreciate the comments. I will pass them up. I can tell, obviously, with the boats in all the cities, that was a huge thing. The sheriff bit into that and said, you know, we need to make things right. So he really pushed, you know, and met with those that need to meet with to take care of that. That was all cities, you know, it was troublesome.
Yeah.
And then the Representative Cheney was talking about it Seminole last night. So that was big that the legislator stepped in as well.
Yeah, she's been great for this area too. Anyone else have anything?
So Mayor and Commission will bring this item back for approval at the September regular meeting. And again, this is in our budget, obviously, for next year at the contracted total amount, the $1,459,896.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Captain.
Thank you.
Take care.
Again, there is no public comment because we have no one in the chamber tonight. Next is approval of 2022 emergency services, medical services, ALS First Responder Agreement. Mr. Gomez?
So we switched from law enforcement to fire EMS, and this is I guess, Chief, if you want to come up and bring up to, but this is also an annual agreement that for the commission to approve, we'll bring back at the September meeting, but this is, I think, I'll let the chief explain it.
Yeah, what it is just the Pinellas County EMS Emergency Management Services that we contract with them to provide medical care throughout Madeira Beach and Reddington's and what have you, and we just renew the contract every year. That's all it is. And then with the funding too, we do that every 3 years, and so we actually get money from them for providing the service to the community. Yeah, so-
Okay, and you've been over it and
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
everything
it's all the same.
looks good to you?
Yeah, this year we actually got the biggest raise we've ever gotten in the history since we've been contracting with the county. Normally, you're only allowed a 3% raise, but they approved a 7.1% raise for us, so,
Great.
yep, pretty
Okay.
good.
Any questions from the commission?
Perfect.
And the agenda item should say fiscal 23. It
Yeah.
says fiscal 20, sorry about that.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't catch that. Next is personal and business use of fireworks.
So, Mayor and Commission received numerous phone calls from residents and regarding the amount of fireworks that were used specifically on the 4th of July. Well, the 3rd, the 4th, and the 5th, and I think even a few on the 6th. So we currently, under Florida statutes, anyone is allowed to utilize various fireworks on 3 days of the year, on New Year's Day, Independent, 4th of July, and on New Year's Eve, the 31st of December. We currently do not have any regulation. We are allowed under state statute to have some parameters, I think by ordinance, and I think, Mr. Trask can, if he's directed to create, obviously we would make sure that it complies with state statute, but we currently don't have any regulations. So for example, the county has an ordinance that stipulates, I believe, no fireworks, period. But other cities have adopted ordinances, for example, stating that they can only be utilized until 10 o'clock or a certain time frame. So that's at the request of numerous residents to bring this item to see if there's any direction you would like any type of ordinance or any type of regulation regarding the use of the fireworks on those 3 days.
Well, just like Mr. Gomez, I got a lot of response on this one, and it wasn't, there was really no question. They want it to be like I think, is it Indian Rocks or Indian Shores? They have an ordinance that just doesn't allow it. So I looked it up, and it says, it is unlawful for any person to offer for sale, expose for sale, sell at retail, or use or explode any fireworks as defined by the laws of the state within the city, except by special permission of the city commission. So the overwhelming response to the people, I have about 52 people on my distribution list, they would love it if we had an ordinance, with the full understanding that it will be hard to enforce when it comes right down to it. But at least there would be an ordinance to enforce. We don't have one right now. That was also from talking. It was the day after our last fireworks event, talking to the sheriff that was on duty. I can't remember his name. He said, yeah, we can go try to enforce the noise issue, which, you know, it's hard when if they light a bomb, by the time they get there, they're gone. But we don't have any, they don't have an ordinance to work with. So, I mean, baby steps to get to where we want to be. I would like to see an ordinance that just bans fireworks on our beach, except for the kind that we pay for, the professional ones. That's where I stand on that.
It states that the county does not allow any fireworks except for sparklers and paper caps. Does that, the city's in the county, which is the jurisdiction?
So the county code specifically covers the city of Madeira Beach, unless the city of Madeira Beach decides it wants to have a different or conflicting ordinance. So right now, the fireworks provision in the county is enforceable in Madeira Beach. You just need to have your deputy do that. Because I'll read it, section 62-483 of the county code says, titled Territory Embraced. All territory within the legal boundaries at Pinellas County, Florida, including all unincorporated and incorporated areas, shall be embraced by the provisions of this division unless a municipality adopts an ordinance which conflicts with this division, in which case the municipal ordinance shall prevail. So currently, the county ordinance is enforceable here. So you have what you need. We just need to be enforced.
So that deputy just was uninformed about it at that point.
I'm not sure, but that, I'm just reading from the county code,
yeah.
what you were told. But
Well, then maybe we need to make it more, not, let our residents know a little more with, emails, flyers, sign, let them know this is the law and we're going to enforce it. Yeah, we don't need an ordinance if that already exists. It's enforceable.
Well, where we don't need ordinances, I don't see putting them in. I see going with the state guidelines. I don't think we need, I mean, there's a lot of kids in this community too. When my son was 12, 13, 14 years old, he loved to set fireworks off on the holidays, and I was out there with him. And I don't think we can shut this town down to where you can't have any fun at all on things on certain days. And I got no problem with people shooting fireworks off on these particular holidays. So I'm all for, in fact, passing an ordinance where they can do that. Even when they're going to the beach now and setting them off, people are picking up after themselves. I was talking with the Trash Pirates the other day. They said when they went out on the 4th of July this year, the beach was much cleaner than it has been in the past. Is it perfectly clean? No, it's not. We clean it up. But that's, it's part of community and celebrating America.
Well, that is a good point of view, but it's in contrast to what our residents are saying. In addition, I think we all know that the loud sounds are not environmentally friendly to pets, animals in the neighborhood. There's lots of research that shows that. So I lit off fireworks as a kid too.
And you had fun doing it too, didn't you?
I enjoy the professional ones better. I felt safer.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of kids that like to do it, and I'm not going to cramp their having some fun. That's my opinion.
We have Chief Belk here with us. Do you see a safety issue historically with the fireworks, personal fireworks?
Throughout my 18 years, I might have ran 1 or 2 calls related to fireworks and injuries. As far as the professional displays that contract through the city, we oversee that through NFPA 1123. So even if it is a professional business that's putting them off, we still make sure they abide by the code and have the setbacks and everything else that they need to abide by. So especially the professional businesses, those are definitely safe in my opinion. As far as, like I said, as far as individuals and homeowners lighting them off, in 18 years in the fire service, I've maybe ran 1 or 2 calls. That's it.
But you don't provide that service for the people that are shooting fireworks off on the beach, right? You don't monitor them.
No, only professional,
Yeah.
businesses.
No, but they would know if they had a call because of an injury, and they haven't had them. Really,
And the main complaint from the residents that I've talked to has not necessarily been the safety, although that's an issue. It's the disruption, the abuse.
You know, then you probably shouldn't be in a neighborhood where there's a bunch of kids and people actually trying to have fun. We can't continue to try to shut this city down and have absolutely zero going on. I'm totally against it.
And that's why we provide those wonderful professional displays.
Well, you and I will have to disagree on that one.
And just to add, Mayor, quickly, and I think Jay wants to make a comment as well, is the requests that I've received were really, can we limit the time frame? So could we, if the city adopted an ordinance, could it be up until 10 p.m. or whatever time frame? And those were the calls that people were saying it's 10:30, and I can still, hear 11 o'clock. So just to be kind of a little more specific as to what the request was, that's the request that came to me from probably about a dozen residents in total.
Well, when I worked midnight shift, I had to sleep during the day, and I put in earplugs. That's what I did.
Jay, just
Just one more, I guess, piece of information for this. Section 42-16 of our code covers special events. And in the definition of special events, there's a whole bunch of stuff, but firework displays and similar gatherings are listed in there. The reason I bring this up is we have had multiple requests this year for fireworks after wedding ceremonies on the beach, to which at this point we have told them no. We have no interest in getting in the business of permitting fireworks after every wedding. So if there were anything written, we might want to adjust this for that, because it's weddings is included, firework displays is included, but I mean, we do our fireworks here, and I know some other events on this property have mentioned potentially having fireworks, but, again, weddings on the beach is kind of a stretch when it comes to that stuff, so.
Yeah.
It appears to be in conflict with the county ordinance.
And
Since we-
I have no problem with the time other than, and I think 10 is too early. New Year's Eve, midnight comes at midnight. People are shooting off fireworks at midnight to celebrate the new year. I think we're making a lot more out of this than it needs to be. It's like twice a year. Let some people have some fun. Those that don't want to hear it, do what I did, put some earplugs in. That's just my personal opinion. Thank you.
Okay, so it sounds like we want to stay with the county for most days and then add fireworks for those, 3 days that the state allows?
That's not what I'm interested in. I'm interested in the county guidelines. No ordinances whatsoever. They're already in place. The county already has them in place.
Okay, well, then I think
Just
we
enforcing those.
If we do that, then I think we also need to remove it from the special events, or remove, I'd kind of say remove from the special events anyways, unless it's a city activity.
I'm for approval of state guidelines and an ordinance that falls in line with the state guidelines.
While the state guidelines are stating those 3 specific holidays, the county specifically says none unless the municipality overrules, and the municipality, I would be in favor of the municipality following the state guideline, and if 4216 needs to be updated to remove special events, I'm okay with that.
Okay. We can bring that back. So we'd mirror the state statute and remove that section from the special events,
Yes.
if you're comfortable with that.
So,
And the reason I say that mainly is because of experience with neighbors and stuff and dogs and, you know, they need to be sedated, but for 3 events that have to do with national pride, I'm going to go in favor of that every time.
good, thank you.
Okay, so it sounds like it's going to come up for a vote with that. And I'm not sure where I stand yet. And so we'll vote yes or no.
Well,
Yes.
yeah, we're not voting on it tonight anyhow. We're just, all we're doing is saying, let's bring an ordinance forward with those parameters in it, and we vote it up or vote it down.
Yeah, no, I kind of came in this going, tonight's an information gathering, at least for me.
Okay, so,
Think we got it.
if, I would like to move forward with an ordinance to follow state guidelines and remove the
Special
particular things that we've got in our ordinance.
Just to be clear, you don't need an ordinance to say you're going to follow the state guidelines. You already have that ability to. So I'll prepare the ordinance relative to removing the word fireworks from the special events section of the code and bring that ordinance back, and you're going to be good to go.
I thought we needed an ordinance to differentiate between the county ordinance and our ordinance.
The state statute takes precedent over the county ordinance.
Okay,
So you get the state statute's telling you can't do it, then you got an ordinance from the county saying you can't do it, so the state's going to control those 3 days.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Ms. Wepfer, have you got something for us, or just got tired of sitting back there with the guys?
Well, wait. So if David wants, if he wants to cut out all fireworks, then that one would require an ordinance change.
Yes.
Correct.
So,
No, I thought that was the county ordinance.
No.
We would just have to enforce the county.
You can enforce the county ordinance. If you wanted to make any other special restrictions on it, for example, no fireworks until 10 PM or something like that, then I would need to modify it. I would need to draft an ordinance.
Right,
But
but the
right
ca-
now,
but the county
ordinance
ordinance already says-
you cannot do it.
Right.
State statute says, yes, you can on those 3 days.
but the state takes
Precedent.
precedent over, so if you want to do it with just the county ones, we now need an ordinance.
That's not my understanding.
The county controls right now in Madeira
We just have
Beach.
to decide which ordinance that we're going to enforce.
So if fireworks are prohibited in Pinellas County based upon the Pinellas County code provision, so if someone is doing it and you want to do something about it, you can call the sheriff's office, and then they'll go out there and either issue a citation or tell the person to stop, or whatever the appropriate action is going to be. But that, you still have those 3 days that are mentioned in the state statute that they're allowed to do it anyhow.
So it's not allowed the other 362, 63 days a
So,
year?
so then I misunderstood. So that means if we didn't want any fireworks ever, we would have to do an ordinance to override the state.
You're not.
not gonna-
We're not going to be able to override the state.
So we,
Yeah.
So we can't prohibit fireworks on those 3 days.
Okay,
They are prohibited the rest of the year,
I got you.
Through the Pinellas County.
the Pinellas County ordinance.
Got it.
And we're just going to clean up the city ordinance relative to special events that mentions it.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Everybody straight? I guess we got it now. Any public comment? No, because there's not any.
No.
Okay, next is Gulf Boulevard Underground Task 2 approval.
We have Ms. Megan Webfer, our Public Works Director. We've been working with the consultant regarding the undergrounding, and Ms. Webfer is here to provide an update where we are.
So what I bring for you this evening is Task 2. This consists of two separate parts. That would be the construction management part of it, and then the estimated schedule of values, which includes the conduit, and that also includes the Bright House and those items for their binding cost estimate. That does not include Duke Energy's binding cost estimate, which I keep being told that we're going to have that any day, so we should have that any day. So the total amount, which most of this will be billed in fiscal year '23, but my hope is to get all of this approved, and then we can be under construction in October.
Okay, and Task 2 will complete the project.
Correct.
Yes.
Except for the Duke Energy binding costs, which we're estimating about 2.1 million. But if you look on the attachments, you have the breakdowns for the construction management on the top, and then the bottom part of that is an estimated schedule of values. And then on that third page, that has the breakdown. So you have on that top of that, that's our penny for Pinellas reimbursements. And then our contractor has kind of broken down that cost for you. And Robin has it on the screens as well.
Okay, so,
Page 72.
yeah. So I'm a little confused on the Duke Energy portion that you're talking about. What is that? What does that consist of?
That consists of everything for the cost to underground Duke Energy's utility. So I don't exactly know why that is separated out versus on the schedule, estimated schedule, you'll see Spectrum's BCE on there. And then is there
No, Duke's,
there's
but
multiple other items that are on there that are included down on that. And mind you, this number could be lower once we get that Duke Energy binding cost estimate, because that's going to tell you exactly how much conduit we need and cabling we need, and that even goes with the Spectrum as well.
So is the Duke Energy price we're getting above and beyond this?
No, the Duke Energy
Okay,
cost will be below. So so what you have in front of you is that 2,348,589. That will be plus the 2.1 million from Duke Energy. So if
So
you look
we're-
on that, the third page, that has that breakdown for you. So
So we're talking 4,084,000.
yes, and we will still, if you're looking at that, we will still be under budget with the penny money that we have allocated to us. We'll have a remainder of $62,000.
Okay.
Which I'm gonna probably take some polls down, because if we don't use it, we lose it.
Okay. Yeah, poles will need to come down.
Yeah, the 130th parking lot one will come down.
I thought there was a contractor that was going to include taking the poles down.
Well, I'm sorry, so if these are only on Gulf Boulevard, so the pole that's in 130th parking lot is set back. So I would like to take that
Okay.
pole, I would like to underground that,
Okay.
so that it's not in that parking lot any longer.
Okey-doke, makes sense, particularly since the parking garage is going there.
Correct, we're gonna have to do it anyways.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions?
So, in summary, you're under budget, you're on time, It's all been budgeted, it's all accounted for. Sounds great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Of course. We hope to be under construction October. We'll work around the busy times, but we hope to have almost all the conduit in the ground before spring break.
Good. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Any public comment? Next is plan development checklist for height requirement or height requirement.
Okay, I'm going to break that up into two sections. You all have a piece of paper with a few things that I wrote down, but I also hope that you've got some ideas. When we look at options from the last few PDs, style of building was something that we made changes and brought up, adding curbing, resurfacing streets instead of just repairing the damage that happens during construction. We've added extra landscaping and added retail to the first floor of developments. So those are all good things, but they don't seem to, in a lot of cases, really go after what I think residents are interested in. So that's what this other proposed options, like doing the solar panels as we go forward. It's going to be to their own benefit, I believe, but let's put that in a contract. The Pervious Pavers was, if Pervious Pavers are not part of the calculation for permeation into the ground, that could be something that the city could ask for, or that the developer could offer. Since there wasn't going to be a benefit, if we change the code and then next item, maybe the Pervious Pavers comes off the list. Water or beach access through the property. If you go to like Hawaii and different places, hotels have walkthroughs from the street to the beach. If there's a big development, maybe that's something that they could offer up or we could request. If there's retail stores that the city decides they want, something Linda suggested, a barber shop or hair salon or something, we ask for space that's available at reduced cost for in that development or something as an option. Pavilion or shade coverage at city parks. We talked about the pocket parks. When I went through and sat and watched, they need some protection from sun at those things. So maybe developers can build a pavilion, they can put donated by the, whatever their group is, but it's also something that actually comes back to residents. Stormwater improvements, they can just put money into a fund or something like that. This one, the next one, funds for the city to provide the traffic study. I'm not sure that really fits in here, but that's one of the things, or one of the items that we seem to get a lot of pushback from people, where we do these developments and any traffic studies and things are done by the developer. Maybe that's something that the city wants to do, and it will keep people from being, the city shouldn't have a vested interest one way or the other. So it's more defensible to.
More impartial.
Yeah, more impartial, okay, thank you. Or then just contributions to undergrounding, streets, beach, improvements, things for, not necessarily for that development, but for somewhere else in the city. So just trying to make the list of options that we use a little more aimed at the city. And whether we did this by having a checklist, or I think you guys will have even better ideas what to put on, but some way to get the PD easier to swallow by people.
Dave, I think these are great suggestions, and I think it should be included on a checklist that people that are impacted would be able to see easily. I did a survey for this topic as well, but most of my responses came with things they wanted to see in comparison. For instance, setbacks. They'd want to see on this checklist or a spreadsheet where they would see this is the setback that the PD is requesting. This is where it stands currently, and this is the reason that it would have to be. They want it to be changed. Height. They'd say this is the height restriction currently. This is the height they want. This is why they want it. What else? Oh, people were talking about music, for instance. If there is any intention of hiring a band or DJs on the roof or the pool deck, they'd want to know that in advance, and if they'd want to have a say-so about that. Beverage permits, that kind of, well, that's probably already there. I have to say that I also got a response that said remove PDs altogether. But I also had a response that said remove codes and ordinances altogether. So I guess they kind of canceled each other out.
Yeah.
I just thought that was interesting, both extremes. I think, limit to 4. Oh, and one that said he would like to see that no PD be considered for any property less than half an acre, so that it would be there would be no implication or perception that it was being done for a private business or a private residence or anything like that. It's limited to half an acre. That before you can even apply for a planned development. Yeah, so basically, what the code is, what change they're asking, what's the rationale, and what are we getting in exchange? So I think the checklist should include those kind of things, just to make it more accessible to residents, to us, to understand better exactly what the planned development is requesting.
Okay. Pervious pavers for sidewalks. I like that. Keep in mind, though, driveways and walkways where you will have traffic over them. For instance, a truck delivering something, heavy vehicles. I've noticed recently my vehicle weighs over 6,000 pounds. My pavers are dipping now just from the weight of that SUV. So pavers are great, but pavers don't hold up heavy vehicles like you would have in a commercial vehicle. So there are areas in a drive you may want to do that, but physically you can't because the pavers are not going to support the truck traffic for commercial vehicles for delivery or whatever. There's not a thing on here that we can't right now ask for in a PD. We can ask for anything we want to in a PD. That's the part of the beauty of a PD. And they actually we can ask for things that are not necessarily having to do with their PD, or since we have imposed impact fees, we can get things done in lieu of impact fees to enhance the city. So a PD gives us a lot of latitude to actually approach these developers and many things you asked, the music, noise, whether they have rock and roll bands or whether they have acoustic music up there. We have noise ordinances. All of this stuff is already available to us in a PD. Jenny, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that's correct. Yes. I don't know if something that y'all would want to look at is having extra bonuses for certain things on the checklist. Like say if you do retail on the ground and solar panels, you get so many points, and those points are put towards extra height or extra setbacks, something like that. A few other communities have done that. It would take a lot of research and a lot of workshopping, but that is also another option, another way to go about it.
And I think it can also go towards, if there's something we really want to go after, we can negotiate it to where it can discount their impact fee.
Yes.
So we already have that ability. This group has just not had a PD come before us to be able to go through and look at these things and see what we may want in there. We've never determined that amongst ourselves, but we do already have that ability.
So what I guess maybe where Dave was heading, maybe I'm wrong. Jenny, is there a checklist of things that exist, or is it?
No,
that-
there is not a specific checklist of things.
Dave, isn't that kind of what you were aiming for when you brought this up, that you wanted to say, well, let's have something standardized, where we can look and say, okay, well, let's ask for this, let's ask for this, or did I misunderstood?
Checklist isn't, it's a way of doing it. It's not as important, but it's just when this all happens in negotiations before we ever know anything about it. So people aren't always looking at, trying to think out of the box. What else? What could it be? What does the city want? And is there some way that we can get that through a PD? So it's kind of like, if you do have a list, it's something to check and to remind you that says, oh, this might fit.
This is an
or
option.
the developer might go, this means something to me.
If you look at page 75 of your packet, it's section 110-386, the second to last paragraph, that last sentence. It gives you examples of civic or community enhancements. So that ground floor retail, expanded setback, enhanced landscaping, and other design enhancements. So those are just examples of things. That's not a checklist, but those are just examples. So if you want to do a checklist.
If I may.
Oh, Linda's also here.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, please, Linda.
I did want to make the note that of the list that I took down, yes, you can do all of those. The only one that I think you'd be restricted from using is the acreage issue. You would need to specify that in code if you were going to limit the size, and that's not unusual. The really only reason that we didn't bring that forward when we updated the PD ordinance is the lots here are so small. And it's hard to accumulate much in the way of acreage, but the point is well made that the advantage to having some kind of size definition is that it avoids the use of the PD as kind of a spot zoning. You don't want to do that.
Yeah,
but there are point systems that others use, as Jenny mentioned, and I think it would also help if you get to that point, you decide you want to list them and points that we would do something. We do it on the site plans and the plans themselves. We have them put on tables that explain everything, but that's pretty cumbersome for people to read through. So I think it would help too for us to amend our staff report style so that we put the recommendations and the conditions that are being considered in a grid form. I think that would be easier as the commissioner was suggesting, it would be just easier and more accessible for people. Currently, we address all those issues, but it's done in more of a text format.
I think if residents knew what the real details of what the developer was providing for us in a easy format like that, they'd be more receptive to it.
Linda, is there a way maybe the commission at a workshop could be involved a little earlier in the process so that we could go through our checklists on what we would like to see a developer do for the city as far as
Yeah. Sure, we can do that. We do have the neighborhood meeting, which you're really not supposed to be making input because they need to get input just from the neighbors, but also we could require them to do a public workshop with the commission up front earlier in the process so that you can really look over what's being proposed. It would just need to be conducted in a quasi-judicial fashion since PDs are quasi-judicial, in that you would only be able to talk about and consider things that were being presented to you at the meeting. You wouldn't take outside input on it. In one way, that might be an advantage in that you know ahead of time there's a quasi-judicial item coming, so if people start approaching you early, you can let them know that's inappropriate. You may want to ask Mr. Trez to weigh in on where in the process or how early we could do something like that, but it would definitely need to be a public meeting.
Okay, yeah, fine. Of course, if we were all meeting together, it would have to be public. But if we did that in somewhere relatively early in the process, then we could discuss it amongst ourselves and say, because it's going to change depending on what the PD is. You may want specific things on one PD that you don't necessarily want on another PD. That may be a moving target as far as what our requests may be, depending on the type of project. So, that's just a thought I have to where we're doing it a little earlier in the process. And then that gives everybody time to absorb and see what we're looking at doing.
I personally like the idea of the points program. I like the idea of bringing the commission and an open public meeting for input early in the process as soon as we have some sort of idea what they're looking for. It all goes back to the master plan and getting that updated. So we need to discuss when and how we can start to implement that, because this checklist will be enhanced by understanding where we want to take the city with the public's input. I am concerned about, let me back up. When we were on the Planning Commission, we did a lot of work and on the impact fees, and the cost studies were not done by the Planning Commission, but they were brought to us at the very end. And the services provided were quite substantial. I'd like to be able to use that input, that data, to try to figure out what's reasonable as far as what we're asking for in the PD process. Is that already covered by the impact fees? We can do whatever we want to with those funds. I don't like the idea of trading services for impact fees, only because I'm very against the residential impact fees. And if we start trading away the commercial impact fees and we have the residential impact fees, it's totally, I'm getting ahead of myself in the program here, but I would eliminate the impact fees. Give us I think they serve a great purpose as giving us an idea of what those impact fees, what those services cost us. Years ago, when I first started coming to these meetings, there was a resident, a lady, I think we were talking about the Cambria, and she was, and the condominiums being built on 150th, and she was, I think at that time, it was prior commissions, and at that time, I think they were looking at raising the millage rate. And it was her perception that we're allowing these commercial properties to build, and the residents were paying the price, the long-term price, for the services needed, the protection, the additional fire, the additional parks, the whatever that were outlined when the studies were done on the impact fees. So hopefully I brought up a few points that are going to be considered here as where we're going to go forward with the PD negotiations. If anything large is a large commercial project's going to be a PD, yeah, I'm agree 100% with everything that's being said. I just want to wrap that all around that with the impact fees. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, some of the concern about the Cambria was it was negotiated, that the whole town center was negotiated before we had our current impact fee regulations in place, and it did not consider certain impact fees such as fire, rescue, that sort of thing, recreational impacts. That was all done, before most of us were here. And so I'm not sure about the details of those decisions and negotiations at the time. I know they were community processes, but it didn't have the benefit of the same kind of review we do now. And in most places, when they're giving bonus points, do not give bonus points in exchange for impact fees, because the impact fees are supposed to cover the basic increase in the impact that the development is going to cause the city, and that the whole point in having bonuses is that they're willing to do something in excess of that, in addition to that, to make it a worthwhile project, that you would go beyond what the code typically allows for the space. So usually the bonus points are applied to a larger commercial or large residential projects, and actually require more along with the impact fees, instead of waiving them. That otherwise you're really not getting that much out of your impact fee ordinance. They're not usually applied to lower intensity residential, because that's not the type of development that goes into a PD or into a large development. And so they're usually only applicable to high intensity, high FAR areas.
Yeah, and as far as residential, I think by state law, you can't have impact fees only on commercial. It has to be commercial and residential. I think we've had that discussion, haven't we, Mr. Trask?
I don't know if I've been involved in those discussions, so I would need to research that.
That's what I remember from the gentleman with the University of Florida that did the study and did our fee structure.
Jerry did state that, and but I challenge it, because I found other cities, just with very quick research and email communications, that they do charge impact fees for commercial properties, but they do not for mitigating your home, for tearing down your home. And we're a fully developed city, so we're not talking about a property that we're going to build a single-family home on that doesn't already have a single-family home.
Okay, just out of curiosity, what cities were those?
I'd have to look back in my notes. I brought it up. At the time, it was actually brought up at a board meeting, and I quickly looked on my phone and spoke at the podium, followed up on a following meeting with email communication with with that jurisdiction, and I'm sure I can find that. But that's just a one-off. There's many cities in the state of Florida.
Yeah. Well, I would be curious as to what cities those are. I'm just going by the professor from the University of Florida that did this, and he told us that you couldn't.
I understand.
I think he told you that too.
If Mr. Trask could look into it, I'd appreciate that as well.
I will also get Mr. Murphy to provide the information to Mr. Trask that he used. Mr. Murphy is, of course, an academic lawyer who works with University of Florida on these projects throughout the state. But so he should have readily available to him all the information he used.
Thank you.
Okay, and the second half of this was building height limits on PDs. One of the things we don't sit into these meetings, maybe we will in the future, where you have persuasive developers coming in and saying what they would like to do. And we live in a place with limited resources, streets, things like that. If you put a limit on the size of what a development can be, that leaves resources for other people to use. And it's kind of, right now, I think we have 2 or 3 developments that are waiting to happen. The Holden properties, and things like that, that are going to be large and affect a lot of people. Is there a way to make sure that we don't run out of resources and before everyone gets their chance to use the share of it? You look at our current height requirement in a PD, I think it's well-intentioned. It wants to be the average of what's out there, but it doesn't do a very good job of saying what to use as a comparison, or at least in the arguments that you hear, everyone's always just trying to say, well, it has to be a PD for that same, as a hotel or a condo or whatever it is, or other people are saying, no, it's just all the buildings in the neighborhood, or it doesn't matter if the building's a block away or 6 blocks away. So I'm thinking we can help the Planning Commission if we can say, okay, we think 8 stories is where we want to be, or 10 stories, or 6 stories, whatever it is. It says, it just kind of takes it out of the discussion and makes it clear to everybody, because that also seems to be a pretty good point of contention in the past. So I was kind of thinking 8 stories, because you have people that have parking, and now it looks like parking tends to be 2 stories. We, in the little blurb for I think it was City Central, they showed buildings that were 11 stories and said that's too much. That's too high a density for at least that area. And I think that was a consultant that came in and said that. I don't think that was the city that said that. But is there some way that we can say, this is the right level, the right height, and just save arguments later, lawsuits later, and do it better?
If I could ask a question, and the part I was looking for happens to be up there, at a maximum, be designed to reflect the average intensity, height, and massing of the development pattern on surrounding property of similar zoning and use. So what defines surrounding property? It's my understanding that residents who are within 300 feet are considered impacted, is that correct? And they have a say-so, is that right?
Yes, that's the affected party.
The
So we
affected
send
parties.
out a notice of
So,
all properties within that 300
but
feet.
when you consider surrounding property when building it, we go farther than 300 feet, don't we?
And there's no definition on what exactly is that surrounding property limitation.
Because right now,
Which makes it
In
difficult.
addition,
and I know
in
this is
addition-
I know this is contentious subject, but, and I don't mean it to be, but the schooner, I think, is based on the hotel that isn't built yet in downtown Madeira Beach. That is going to be 8 stories.
8 stories.
Which isn't built yet, and we're using that as a guideline for the schooner. So what's surrounding? And if only people in 300 feet are impacted, maybe that should be our guideline. Maybe we should just base it on the average of surrounding being the people that are impacted. So that would be just a few blocks for a property.
I think also
Mr.
what's difficult is in
May
that-
may I give you a little history on it?
Okay.
And I think Jenny's probably going to this next. The sentence doesn't stop with surrounding property. It says in the same similar or zoning or use, because it would be considered unfair to have a land use that allows you to build a hotel or anything else that was a higher intensity use, and you happen to have a single family home next to you that's or a 2-story home next to you, and so you're only allowed to go that high. We wanted to avoid getting into a situation where there's a taking, because you're now limiting a zoning to something that's actually not even required to be that limited. And so that sentence ends with the surrounding properties that are in the same zoning or use. In addition, when this policy first came to the commission in 2019, there was actually a section that limited the height, and it allowed it to go to 6 stories or to use that language that's in front of you. And so there was the assumption that at most by right you could come in with a 6 stories, but if you were going to come higher than that, you needed to bring in some really clear benefit to the community to go higher. And that section for some reason was taken out, and I wish I could speak to exactly what the thinking was, but I was out on medical leave at that time, and the attorney representing the project at the time was Julia Mandel, and so Mr. Trask and his firm weren't familiar with that either. The same with the PD ordinance. They were not involved in that. That was separate. But in this particular case, there was intended to be that kind of height base restriction, and then something that allowed you to go a little higher as long as it was a clearly public purpose to doing so.
I would like to stop right now if I can for a 5-minute recess so I can go get rid of all this water. Yes. Okay. Okay, this meeting is reconvened at 7:48 PM. Sorry to interrupt the meeting. And where did we leave off? Director Portell, you were talking about heights. I do know, I don't know I don't remember the last figure on the schooner project, but y'all realize we do have I think, 12-story building here. The Ocean Sands
Or
right
12
at
stories.
150th and Gulf Boulevard. And, you know, it's something we probably shouldn't get into tonight, but the schooner bent over backwards to work with the people, including the condominium next door to them, to where they literally cut off half of the building and made it triangular so that they were not blocking the view of the people in that condo. And the people in that condo building support a new schooner after what has been there for years. I think what we need to look at, more so than height, is to look at saving green space. And I would rather give height and get green space for the city. What happened with the Cambria and the condominiums that are being built over there was the height got reduced. Yes, it did. But the footprint got bigger. And so what happened was we lost green space. Let's face it, over 2 stories, you can't see over it. You can't see over these buildings that are across the street here. They're 2 or 3 stories. But if you let them go up a little higher and you had green space to where you could see through, because the distance from the Cambria to those first condominiums originally were going to be 150 feet. They're now 80 feet because we lost green space. The distance between those new condominiums and the next building that's going to be built was going to be 400 feet. And because of negotiations from someone who apparently didn't want his view blocked, that building got pushed slap up against the other one. So he got his view. We got a concrete wall down 150th. So be careful what you wish for. These heights are not necessarily an evil thing. What we need to keep, in my opinion, and these are, everybody has their opinions, but I would rather give a developer a little bit of height and be able to have some green space so that we don't have a concrete jungle. And that's what people are asking for when they're so caught up on this thing of not giving them 1 more story or 2 more stories. Don't think about that. Think about what you're getting in the way of green space to keep this tropical paradise that we live in a tropical paradise rather than a concrete jungle, because that's what you're getting when you're lowering the heights.
I think many of the people that spoke to me are not just concerned about the height for height's sake, but with the density that is increased with the number of people that we're putting in those extra stories. So the density increase is I think as big a concern as the height. More stories, more people.
Well,
more toilet flushing, more lights on.
For instance, the schooner's done, but it was put out there that the schooner was adding 56 units. It wasn't adding 56 units. It was already 44 units. They added 12 units. Did you know that?
Yeah.
So a lot of games are being played on this height thing. This property has gotten so valuable out here that you've got to let these people do some things with it to make it economically feasible for them. The Bank of America property is going up for sale in the next few weeks. They're expecting that little bank and parking lot to go for $4 to $5 million. Now, what have you got to do to be able to justify paying that kind of price for a piece of property?
Whatever it is, I hope it doesn't detract from the quality of life of the residents on our island.
Well, that's fine, but you know, whatever happens to it, you've got to a certain extent, you can't legally stop somebody from doing something with their own property. The last time I checked, this is still the United States, and people have a right to do things with their property. And you can't stop people from within reason doing things with their property. And Mr. Trask, correct me if I'm wrong.
You're not wrong. Anybody that owns property within the city can build whatever is allowed per code, to whatever height is allowed by code, whatever setbacks are allowed by code, whatever intensity or density allowed by code. So long as they build it to code, they're allowed to do it. And we don't have a legal way of stopping that. So
my point is, height is not necessarily a villain. To me, for me speaking, lack of green space is, because I think that adds, for me, that adds to my quality of life, is to be able to enjoy the lush landscaping, tropical landscaping and all. It's something I enjoy, just like you enjoy orchids. It's one thing we have in common. I got orchids in my backyard too.
Oh my God.
So I want you to understand where I'm coming from when I say that I don't think 8 stories or so is out of line by any means. But what I do want with that is green space so that it looks beautiful. You can do a lot with landscaping.
If I might, I think you're both talking about the same thing as far as maintaining the density. It's just the shape of the building.
Well, and exactly, because that's what it is. Like, you know, they can still get their density. It doesn't have to be overly dense, but that may take being able to have a story or two extra and be able to leave some of that piece of dirt they bought as a piece of dirt with landscaping.
I would also like to point out that with the PD process, you can't get an increase in density or intensity, how it's written in our code.
Right, but you
can't get the height, extra height.
But if we can get the extra height, we can get extra room for that landscaping. That's what makes it look like it's not a concrete jungle.
Yes, I just wanted to make sure that that was clear.
So, and that's where I was going with that. So I think we need to be pretty careful on what we do on restricting height with a PD. You know, 8 or 9 stories is probably accurate, or 8 stories over parking. Because of FEMA, we've got to let them have parking. They've got to go up by law. That's something they didn't have to comply to years ago. They could build ground level, but now they can't build ground level. The schooner, you back out of their parking lot and you back onto Gulf Boulevard. If that's not an accident waiting to happen, I don't know what is. But they lose some of it there because they had to raise the entire hotel up to build parking and for FEMA regulations so that a storm surge goes under it, not through it.
Before we move on, change subjects, Commissioner Hudson had on here funds for the city to provide the traffic study for the project. During the PD, they typically do provide a traffic study, but I would agree with what you're stating, maybe earlier in the process, that the city be reimbursed and the city actually do the traffic study or hire to do the traffic study, so that we know it's independent and it's unbiased. Because that's one of the complaints I've heard with previous PDs.
Director Portell, has the developer been paying for the traffic studies, or has FDOT?
No, the developer pays for the traffic study. It has to be submitted to FDOT because they have to accept ahead of time the methodology, and then also have to review all of the outcomes if it's their road. So it doesn't matter to FDOT who pays for it. One way to do it would be to pay the city to hire a consultant. I wouldn't think we would want to have that kind of personnel on the payroll all the time, because it doesn't come up very often. But to be able, the city could contract out so that the client was the public instead of the client being the developer. I mean, the engineers have a code of ethics they have to adhere to, and as I said, it all has to be submitted to DOT for approval.
Okay, I would have no problem with it, the city doing it and just being reimbursed as a part of the fees to the developer. So that's fine with me.
I would suggest we would come back with language that would require them to pay for that up front instead of reimbursed, because we don't want to be trying to track down such a huge fee.
Okay,
I would agree.
yeah, that's fine with me.
And Director Portal, as far as stormwater improvements, that's not something we're negotiating for. That's a requirement, isn't it?
Yes, that is. And also, there was talk about things like roadway improvements. If it's right in front of the property, that's all part of the impact fee, or it just may be part of the development requirement because of access changes to the property. So stormwater would be the same.
So that would
because
be
we do have specific requirements for that that's even in the comp plan. And in fact, the way our comp plan reads is a little more strict than what the Water Management District requires already. But those things, and then I wanted to mention the pervious, impervious. I want to make it clear that when we talk about approving pervious pavers, we don't accept pervious pavers in and of themselves as being as percolating. It has to be part of a pervious paving system, which means the underlying rock strata, 18 inches down at a minimum, is to a degree and the type that's engineered to ensure it remains percolating over time. So just putting pavers down on the ground does not improve percolation, even if the pavers themselves percolate. It only goes as far as the compacted ground underneath it, and then the water runs out to the neighbor's property anyway. So it has to be a system of impervious paving. We had addressed that more specifically in the landscape ordinance we were bringing forward to you some time ago, but we were just recently talking about other places in the code we can spell that out.
Now, one last question on that. As a condition of approval and an ask for a PD, could we ask for things like stormwater improvement that are not on the property but may be in the same locality or down the street or where it's needed, but we don't have funding to do that within the city?
Yes, you can. And I've worked with both cities and developers over the years that have made those kind of commitments. Other improvements like markers or pillars, columns, or something that designated a nearby neighborhood as being residential or having its own name to signify that was not a commercial place to be. Other improvements for stormwater in city property or the addition of playgrounds on city parks other things of that nature, yes.
So we would just amend your list here to be off-site, basically. Okay.
Yeah, and
Correct.
that's the beauty of the PD, is that you can ask for anything you want to. You know, it's just like any other negotiation, you may or you may not get it, but certainly we can have a list, and I'm fine with a list that we go over, and I'm fine with getting involved earlier in the process to where we can have some input on asking for these things.
Agreed.
So I like your list. So if there's anything.
That's all I have.
Yeah, and if, maybe we can bring this back to discuss some more, and each of us get a list together, and it won't be a list that we'll go and say, hey, you got to do all these things. We'll, depending on the particular PD, we'll go down the list and decide what we want to try to get out of a developer for a particular piece of property.
Sure.
But I hope y'all keep in mind green space, because once you get over a couple of stories, your view's blocked regardless. So I think that's something we need to focus on and think about is, do we want green space or do we want concrete walls? Personally, I like the idea of the green space.
How do we keep this on the agenda to keep moving forward? Do we have a public meeting, special
That
workshop?
gentleman right there will put it on another workshop
Sure,
for
if
us.
you'd like to. Can go in next month's workshop if you'd like.
And that'll give us time.
If I may suggest, next month's workshop, you also have the activity center, which should require quite a bit of input, unless we should put the activity center on a separate workshop.
Okay, well, maybe we'll need to push this to
October.
October. There's no rush on it. There's nothing coming at us right now. So, something I wanted to bring up on this item was, let me go to page 74. I was reading over this, and in numerous spots, it talks about the commission going over things, going over plans. For instance, page 79, section 110-393, halfway down the page. The Board of Commissioners shall review the proposed development plan for compliance with provisions of Article 3, site plans, and the following general conditions. And that particular statement is made several times going through here on page 80, just under item 12. Lastly, the Board of Commissioners must review plans, drawings, and schematics of proposed development plan in detail. Such drawings shall define the physical character of the project, including all building and architectural treatments. I am not qualified to do that, and I don't think anyone sitting up here is. I think we need to be depending on staff to do this. That's their purpose.
Isn't the intent for both the staff and the board to do that?
I'm reading what this says verbatim.
Yes, that language was in the original PD, and I put a whole lot more detail in here when I proposed the PD amendment, but wasn't about to suggest that the BOC was removed in any way from PD review. And that it could maybe be clarified. Obviously, the intent is that you will have in front of you complete staff review, and also it has to come from the Planning Commission, which is responsible for making recommendations technically to the zoning map, which this affects, or
Yeah, but
any of the land development codes.
Yes, Director
We could-
Portel, because
we
we're,
could specify.
yeah, we're all laymen on this. This is not a task that we're qualified to do. So.
Right, we'll look over the language with Mr. Trask and see if he has a better suggestion.
Okay. And another spot I noticed was page 82, item 1, ordinance rezoning this site to PD shall be repealed. Shouldn't that be may be repealed? Is that, or am I overreading this?
No, I think it's very, very specific. They want to make sure that the project gets moved along and it's not just sitting out there stagnant. And so I think that was probably the reason that was added back in the day, was to make sure that the projects moved along. If they didn't do it, then it would revert back to what it was before.
Okay, well, that's what this gentleman was talking about earlier today, was getting a project moving.
Yeah, well, that's, I understand that,
Yeah.
and I'll be happy to talk to him a little bit about it, but you don't have any control over that. And the reason you don't have any control over that is because there has been several executive orders issued by the governor that created states of emergency. During the states of emergency, there is a tolling of any time limit. In addition to that, the Florida legislature adopted a couple of years ago a provision in the state statute that says not only is it tolled for that period of the state of emergency, but it is also tolled for an additional 180 days. So if you have a 60-day state of emergency, you have a 240-day tolling period. And every single time that you have a state of emergency here in Pinellas County, whether it's for a hurricane or COVID or whatever it is, that deadline for whatever development is just continues to move when the request is made by the developer to take advantage of that extension.
Okay.
And that is what has happened at that corner.
Okay, and and we had a year of COVID to boot.
Well, so it's whatever time period that the governor decided was the state of emergency.
Yeah,
So,
and a lot of what has happened there was, and nobody brought up, I don't know that anybody brought up green space down there. They simply fought height. And rather than going for green space and letting them have a little bit of height, that's why that property is still sitting there like it is.
okay.
Time limitations may be something that can be worked into the PD when negotiating. You're going to have this project completed under a certain time.
The problem, there are a couple of problems with that right now. One is just like we're having problems with staffing. So are construction companies, and there are supply train issues now also. So I don't know how a builder gets around supply train issues.
At least to break ground, and then, I don't know, it's something more than we are prepared to discuss at this time, but I'm just putting it out there.
Okay.
Those development agreements do have a limited time available to the developer before they break ground, but they're usually pretty long periods of time. In this case, I think it's 10 years.
Thank you, Director Portal. That's my exact point, where we can say, okay, we're going to give you this under these conditions, but this is one of the conditions, is you're going to break ground within the next 24 months, 12 months, whatever it is.
Yeah, I think they've broken ground down there, but they've got bulldozers just pushing dirt around occasionally to keep it active.
Yes, sir, that's the case. And then also, I think that in terms of breaking ground, for instance, the town center's limit, they had 3 years to break ground, but the overall PD was good for 15. I think it's a similar situation with the others.
Okay. Okay, is there anything else on this? And are we all in agreement about the commission not being qualified to go over the plans and drawings and schematics of the proposed development?
I'm not sure what your ask is there. I mean, as far as the details is, details on a drawing on construction methods, and that, I would say not overall, but generally, the number of units, the height, the overall dimensions of the building compared to the overall dimensions of the property, the setbacks, those sort of things, sure we are.
Lastly, the Board of Commissioners must review the plans, drawings, and schematics for proposed development plan in detail. I'm not qualified to do that. And I don't think anyone up here is. I think, and that's what we discussed earlier, that's something we need to depend on staff to do for us and give us recommendations. That's part of their function.
I reserve my right as commissioner to review those plans and base my.
Well, I'm not
opinion.
saying you can't review them. I'm just saying.
I'm not going to say I'm a draftsman or an architect.
Yeah, there you go.
But I do
That's-
reserve my right as a commissioner.
Oh, well, I'm
to-
not saying
to-
that, but.
To vote my opinion based on my research, my written.
But to
review.
say must.
But of course, I will consider staff recommendations,
Yeah.
naturally.
Absolutely. So, but to say must review, I mean, I can look, is looking at them, reviewing them. I don't think that's really reviewing them, not if I don't have the expertise to go over them as an engineer or someone like that would do. Okay. Next is Pervious Pavers. Director Portel or Jenny, would you like to start the discussion on this?
I see Jenny pausing.
She's throwing you under the
Yes,
bus
yeah,
on
yeah,
this.
Exactly.
That's right. Yeah, I was mentioning earlier, we've talked a lot, the issue of the impervious pavers have come up, and I did want to make it clear that when we talk about impervious pavers, we're not just talking about some, individual pavers that are laid on the ground. That doesn't turn the ground into pervious soil. In fact, eventually the pavers themselves can become clogged, or they just become compacted. If you're driving over it, the ground becomes compacted. So those pavers have to be part of an engineered system, and it's at least 18 inches in depth, and it has various strata of granite or gravel and things of a particular size to filter the water, but allow it to percolate down through the system. And those are the only times that we consider it pervious. And so there are other kinds of impervious surfaces or pervious surfaces that can be put down. They're not necessarily pavers or look like pavers, but there are other kinds of surfaces that may be working like that underneath buildings that the building is draining to, that have water containment systems under them as well. We have some of those in town, but it has to be a system that really does, by engineering, allow the water to get into the ground and be filtered. Because our concern about runoff is not only the quantity of the water, but the quality of the water. We have both of those two concerns when we're dealing with surface area, whether it's really percolating properly.
If I might. So right now, the city does not allow for pervious pavers, even if they are what I'm going to deem as engineered pervious systems. And
Yes, we do.
you do allow for.
we do allow people to come in with pervious systems, yes.
Okay. I thought at a previous meeting it was mentioned that they were not allowed. But maybe it's a
Well,
vocabulary
probably because they
thing.
were talking, they were talking probably just about the pavers themselves, just laying them down. Because some people have come in and said we weren't allowed to use the pervious pavers. All they plan to do is buy pervious slabs and lay them on the ground, and we explained to them, no, that has to be a whole system associated with that. We've got the water issues, obviously, to consider.
Okay.
And the runoff quantity and direction is important, because our lots, if they become impervious, run off onto neighboring lots and create flooding or erosion in those neighboring lots as well.
That makes sense. Earlier, Ms. Wepfer mentioned that we're having issues with pavers down in Johns Pass because of the truck traffic, and the mayor reiterated that as well. I know we have them, or they have them at the Caddies. I don't know that there's any truck traffic there. With your experience, can the engineered pervious systems be installed in areas of vehicle traffic without issues later on of them becoming gullies and they're not flat any longer, showing the wear
It would
of
be
the vehicles?
It would definitely should be a different engineered system than what we see in like a neighborhood lot. And then in some of those other older systems, I'm not really sure how well they were engineered. I can't account for what kind of regulation took place earlier.
Okay, so you don't...
But that is something I will definitely take up with our engineering and design people and make sure that the code specifies that. And I'll work with Director Wepfer on that as well.
Okay, I mean, because I'd love to see that type of system down at Johns Pass Village, but if it's something that's going to, 20 years from now, be an issue or have to be replaced, that wouldn't make very good sense, but I can't speak to it.
Hello. So you mentioned Kitty Stewart. We don't allow heavy trucks to go in that parking lot because of those pavers. I think naturally pavers are softer material. And also, even though they are pervious in that parking lot, my street sweeper can't clean it, because if we vacuum that, we're going to suck up everything that is around those pavers and then cause those pavers to move. So it's kind of a catch-22 in a sense. The new system that I would like to switch over in the village, it's called a Flexi Pave. It's a rubber material that's pervious that allows for the weight of the vehicles that flexes versus sinking and cracking. And I mean, the pavers in Johns Pass are old. They're 20-something years old. So naturally, they need to be redone. But personally, I don't like to have pavers, especially with heavy trucks in certain areas where garbage trucks, delivery trucks, unless they're properly laid, which over time they still have to be changed and fixed and corrected because they naturally sink, especially in flood-prone areas. It's just not one of my personal picks.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Just making some notes.
Director Portel, do you have anything else on this for us?
No.
And Director Wepfer, I have been told that because of the high water table here, the pervious surfaces are really not doing us that much good, because one way or another, the water is either going through the gutters to the canals, or it's seeping through the ground
So if
into the
we're,
canals?
if we're referring to the pervious pavement in Boca Ciega and also 137th, in order for those roads to be pervious pavements, we had to do core sampling. And if they didn't have that proper material where they would perk, then they weren't candidates. But as we talked about yesterday, in some areas where that water table is higher and those roads are a little bit lower, that salt water comes up through those roads, which is part of an issue with pervious. It's going to come back up through.
So we spent the money. In reality, we didn't get much bang for our buck.
No, we did. Absolutely, we did. I mean, the pervious pavement does work, but in those lower areas, it's not a good
Well,
idea.
that's what I'm saying, though, is the water table is so high in really probably most of the island. I know it was looked at for the Crystal Isle project and determined that it wasn't worth what we were going to spend out there.
It's very expensive.
Yep.
Very, very. And it's not easy to maintain.
Right.
Especially-
But Megan, in those areas of Boca Ciega where it wasn't a good candidate, we just paved those, right? They're
Yes,
not, they're
that
not,
is
they're
correct.
not
That's-
water, they're
that's
not water
around-
permeable.
That's around the loop, correct.
right.
But then there's that low area on 131st and Boca Ciega Ave that is lower.
Right.
So it constantly holds water.
Part of my question, though, is where is that water really ending up? You understand my question?
It goes into the ground. It's the same thing with the water table.
I
If-
mean, because I can dig down a couple feet and I can get water, and it's salt water.
That's correct. But the difference with the pervious, and I could actually show you guys pictures from whenever we did the project, is there is a whole layer of systems that go into this. So it actually filters the water, which is why we had Swift Mud funding for this along with the baffle boxes in Boca Ciega. So it does filter the water, which is why we have to vacuum it rather than just sweeping it.
Yeah, well, I was just wanting to make sure we didn't have water going to the bay through the gutter or through pervious pavement into the bay.
We have,
Through-
I
through
mean, in
the
those
ground.
areas down there, we
Through
have,
the
we do
ground.
have baffle boxes, yeah.
That was my question.
Okay.
Okay.
I think I
thank you.
answered it, right?
Okay,
Thank you.
close enough for hand grenades. Any other questions? Okay, next is discussion on ordinance 2022-23, fees and collection procedure manual, fiscal year 2022 still? Or are we calling this 22, or is that a typo?
Yeah, it'll still,
also?
no, it'll still be the current fiscal years as we're updating the fees and collections. And again, it does have to be adopted via an ordinance. But we're looking to update the, excuse me, citywide, and is listed in the item across multiple departments in community development, planning, zoning, impact fees, finance relating to parking, parks and recreation related to summer camps, rentals, special events fees, public works, various commercial fees for dumpsters and various enforcement provisions, and numerous fees in our marina department related to transient dry storage and boat ramps. And you have in the packet, again, in these strike-through underline method, the changes in various fees, and we'll go through these. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask, and certainly the department representatives are here. For planning, and so I'm on page 95 of the agenda under development services. Starts on page 94, goes into page 95, looking to update the listed fees for certain zoning variances, for residential, multifamily, a special exception use, appeal, after the fact variance. Again, just increases that are nominal, anywhere from, essentially from about 1 to 15%, well, actually 60% increases, but staying current with market conditions and certainly ensuring that we're not falling too far behind from neighboring jurisdictions, including reviewing construction drawings, replats. So this is related to, again, construction drawings that do come to us.
I'll start if you don't mind. I asked for this to be removed from the regular meeting so that we could talk about it at a workshop. A couple of items that I would like to bring up, and the first has to do about the zoning variances for, let's say, residential dwellings. That variance may be a very small item, but at $1,800, to even ask the question if you can do something, like with your garage, or ask the question, you know, we have a lot of these, many homes are non-conforming to the lot lines for different items to be done. And that's a huge expense just to ask the question if you can do it. Now I understand that there's cost associated with running a variance. You know, the special magistrate has to come out, you have to pay his time. But I'm thinking that you put some of these together, and if someone wants to expedite a variance, well, then maybe that's the price that they have to pay to expedite a variance. But if you get a few of these together and they can wait a couple of months where he's going to be here anyway, it's not that much time. And the only other thing is you're putting your notice out, posting it out in your front yard. So, I mean, there are some expenses, but $1,800 just seems a little extravagant. I'll keep going while I'm have the floor here. Public records requests. I'm just wondering, instead of for the low, you know, you're being reimbursed for the lowest paid personnel capable of fulfilling the request.
It's at the beginning, Robin.
I'm thinking, why can't you just have like a $30 fee per hour, or $50 fee per hour, or 60, whatever it is, or you know, 15-minute increment or whatever. Just a thought on that. And then I know I'm jumping around, but I'm gonna throw them all out there at one time.
Page number, if you will. Gross page number.
The page number on that one is 93 of
93.
142,
Yeah,
page
93.
5 of 30.
For the clerk, I don't
For
think
the
we're
clerk?
making changes to that other than
Well, you're striking the city will provide
the first 30 minutes for free.
But it's also for the lowest paid personnel. I'm just putting out there.
Well, I'm not sure what, I mean, I know, I mean, it's not always the lowest paid person that's fulfilling the request. We're simply recovering our costs. But,
Okay,
I mean, we don't, I mean, that's really the reason why we were changing it, because we're really not doing that all the time.
Okay, I'm just curious. Someone makes a public record request, what can they expect to be paying?
I think
We
Clara
provide
just
that.
mentioned that's governed by state law.
Okay.
Is that correct, Clara?
Yeah, if it's paper copies, it's 15 cents one-sided, 20 cents double-sided. Where that fee is, that's for the time, it's things that it takes a long time to produce. Like, we may go through 10,000 emails, or
No,
you have to
and-
divide those. And so that's the reason the Florida statute provides for that time.
And you're justified to be reimbursed. I just, you know, early in here, I think it's stated on the very beginning, the purpose of this agenda, bear with me a second, is basically a fundraiser. It was written in here. Background of this agenda is presented to the board commissioners. fiscal impact. This amendment will result in additional revenues to the city. I guess doesn't necessarily consider a fundraiser, but I'd like residents to be able to feel free to have a public records request on something and not feel like the city's trying to profit from it. They want to.
Well, I will tell you that
But they
we-
definitely want to recover their
Hours
costs.
We
and hours that we
definitely
don't
do not
charge.
profit from the public records request, and that is definitely not happening. I mean, the amount of requests that we receive on some of them are just exorbitant. And honestly, I mean, I think we're to the point where with software that we're purchasing, we may just put every single email out for the public except those that are exempted, because otherwise we're spending hundreds and hundreds of hours fulfilling requests, and in many instances, duplicate requests and requests for a second or a third time. It's just, that's not why, fully accountable and transparent is what we want to do, yes.
The new email, the new Barracuda that we're getting, that we signed up for this week, that's gonna really cut down the time of having to go through all these emails. It's gonna separate the duplicates, and it's gonna pull up one of those. Now, if one of those emails had changed, it'll pull that up. But that would eliminate a lot. This is cutting down cost. Our goal is to charge the public less, if at all possible, for them to get it free. And then the Laserfish program is very easy for people to find what they need. And our goal is to get everything, like the city manager said, is to post everything that can be posted, that it's not exempt, you know. But we're in that direction. That's what we're
Okay.
doing.
I give on that one. Just brought it up for conversation.
Yeah, Clara has spent as much as 20 hours a week on open records requests.
I have been here on a late Friday, all day Saturday, all day Sunday, to go through all
And
these
hopefully they're
emails.
being charged for that time.
Right.
But
And if we charged them for the actual time, so they're really getting a break. A lot of them are really getting a break, because we're not charging them for the duplicate. They wouldn't be able to afford those public records requests, but it's our program that we have that we're dealing with that doesn't separate them. So we don't charge them for the whole time, but we're changing the program. We found one that will actually separate all those, and it's less time for us as well.
You mentioned that earlier, and I think
Yeah.
that's a great thing. So just to recap then, the zoning variances, I'd like to look at those and see if there's some way that if someone wanted to put a column in their yard and they needed a variance, or they wanted to change the use of their garage and they needed a variance, or $1,800 before they even start the project on a small project, I don't know. I think that's...
I would say the majority of that is having the special magistrate attend, and then we also have our attorney attend that meeting. So having that drives up the cost. We also have staff time, and we write a staff report, as well as the mailing and posting, all that notice requirements. But it's really having that at the special magistrate meeting and having the special magistrate attend.
So if there's a way to think about it where, if there's any way to consolidate them where the attorneys are all in the same room when you do 6 or 8 of them, just a thought.
We only get a few variances a year, so I think that's
Oh, okay.
that's the hard thing. We get 2,
Well,
maybe 3.
At these prices, come on, I guess you do.
And so you might see, like, I think it's Treasure Island, theirs is a lot lower. A lot of the other barrier islands are a lot lower, but they don't have the special magistrate. They go to Board of Adjustment, they go to Planning Commission. So that's why theirs is a lot lower,
Okay.
if you're just comparing
And
with
I
other
don't,
cities.
I don't know if you can hear me, but the magistrate not only has to attend, but they have to issue an order. So it has to specify exactly what the conditions are for granting. So it's not as simple a matter of their attending and issuing an opinion at the meeting. They then have to go back and document everything and create a legal order. So some of their magistrate's time is caught up in that.
Okay. All right. I had to bring it up. And then I brought up earlier that, and Mr. Trask's going to check into on the impact fees on the residential, if that needs to be charged, because I'm totally against that.
Well, you already have an ordinance in place establishing the impact fee, so that would require another ordinance to repeal it. Yeah.
Based on your findings, it would be either maybe a repeal or an adjustment.
Either way, it would require an ordinance. But yeah, absolutely. I'm going to get you an answer to your question. Yeah, okay.
Mayor, if I could, I just have a quick question, and just for clarification, the park pavilion rentals, I just want to make sure that means that people who want to exclusively rent the pavilion or the volleyball court, that means they're just renting it for a party or something like that. Anybody can just go out there and use it. They just can't be guaranteed that time or space. Is that right?
That's what
Okay.
that's correct, yes.
Thank you. A resident asked me that. I thought I knew the answer. I just wanted to make sure that I had that.
Yeah, we've got a thumbs up from Jay back there, so.
Thank you.
Other changes, just to quickly go through, is, again, Mr. Trask will go over the impact fees. We just did not have these in the collection, this manual, so that's, I think, mainly why they're included in here, because we didn't have them in this manual where we keep every charge that we levy. In parking, looking for the parking fines and penalties, the citations, to increase overtime parking to 60, if you double park from 50 to 80, parking in a no parking to 90, other improper parking $90. And our code lists that we can issue a citation every hour for a repeat violation. That just was not in this manual, but it's in our code of ordinances.
Ooh, that could be pretty brutal.
Okay, yeah. I've walked in the building several times, and there's people standing at the counter going after Jamal or who's ever sitting there. It seems like parking has become a bigger contention point lately. And some of these numbers seem pretty high. Is that really what we want to do to make them higher? I guess, does this make sense to Jamal? He's the one that puts up with all the people in his face.
Well, it seems a issue, unfortunately, people think they don't have to follow, either to pay for parking or they can park almost wherever they desire. I mean, these are meant to be punitive because people are choosing, in many instances, not to follow, not to comply. Parking needs to have constant turnover. I mean, that's how it works. Or we just we don't charge for parking. But I don't think we don't necessarily want to go there. We felt this would be much, encourage people to follow so that you don't have to receive the citations. I mean, if your direction, and we were just looking to, make it, again, punitive and a little, again, just increase to encourage people to follow our parking rules and our parking ordinances. But if you think that's too high, we can leave them as they are, or... well, it's also quite competitive. Yeah, come on. Jamal, our parking manager.
Mayor, everyone. It's quite competitive as well as far as other neighboring cities. So we're not,
right.
Yes. So we're just trying to keep up with everything going on as far as being competitive in that rate.
Okay. Yeah. And you can stand all of the people coming in to talk to you.
Absolutely.
Okay.
He's tough. I've seen him in action.
In real
I do,
What did you do?
Oh, not with me.
I do have one thing I'd like to bring up on this, and that was, I received a letter the other day And it involved a young lady that had been to a local bar and had too much to drink and decided the responsible thing to do was to Uber home. And I'm wondering if we maybe need to look at charging them the hourly rate for overnight parking as a ticket. I mean, I don't want to I don't want it to be a habit, but I also don't want to be the one that encouraged someone to make the decision to drive while intoxicated.
We can look into that.
Does that make any sense to
I mean, it's
anyone,
just,
or-
I mean, it's difficult because, I mean, yes, each
know.
one is kind of sort of unique, but it's very difficult, and I really advise, and Jamal and I have had many discussions against making the exceptions. You make one exception, you're going to have a dozen next day, 20 next week, et cetera. And again, it goes back to the turnover, the purpose of this enterprise, because that's what it is. It's a business.
Sure.
So yes, we don't want people obviously to be in a vehicle and drive if that's what happened. It's really, and people, well, I didn't see the signs. Well, we've added, and Jamal and his staff have added, I mean, I don't know if you've kept track, but we're probably into nearly 100 signs when you take into account the signage that is on each parking kiosk. In addition to signage in most of I think all of our lots that we've added. And we're going to add more signage related to beach access. We were out this morning, Public Works and our deputies looking at some of the residential areas that were brought up at yesterday's meeting. And yet there's some signage that was there that's no longer there. So we can look into doing that. Is that an option if people are there? We're looking at the Madeira Way. Right now, Madeira Way is free to park. It's limit, again, to keep the beachgoers. Possibly one option would be on Madeira Way is we enforce the 90 minutes for a certain time during the day. Again, because the premise is to keep people going to the sand from parking there, taking up spaces that in essence are designed for the businesses on that street. Now, that is going to change because, few businesses have closed, one opened, but the west side of Madeira Way, that eventually will be demolished. So we can look at maybe putting that 90-minute time limit, maybe 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. We have had residents ask, can I park there? I do my morning walk. Actually, I'm sorry, not residents, but visitors that live just outside of our city. Can I park there in the morning? Will I get it, yes, you can park there because you're walking, you're there, as long as you don't exceed 90 minutes. People have said, no, I'm only there walking 30 minutes an hour, and that's before the business is open. So we'll look to likely change that and maybe say the 90-minute is 90 minutes between 10 a.m. and sunset or something, again, to allow the businesses the turnover. And a lot of people use the post office as well. And,
Right.
I've had people, well, I couldn't find a place to park to go into the post office. So
And that's probably a good idea. And maybe I wouldn't advertise it, but if there's a car overnight, then and it's not the 90 minutes. If they have to leave it there overnight, then leave it there overnight. I want the people to be responsible, and I want the city to be responsible too. Absolutely. I don't want to put the city in a position where people feel like they're kind of being forced into, some people, they might have spent their last $10 at the bar. They may not even have Uber money to get home.
Sure. I think if I may add, with proper rotation as far as staffing, I'm trying to build up to that. Just the visualization of staff out there and being in communication with our guests that come to our beach, that will help tremendously. And that will show that people are out there writing citations, but also monitoring traffic flow and this and that to an extent. But I've noticed just being out there late night, there's been a lot of, like Robin was stating, just a lot of disobedience when it comes to parking. So a lot will tell me, I didn't know I had to pay after a certain time, and, even though there's plenty of signage. So we want to try to eliminate that and just have people aware. If people are aware of their limitation as far as purchasing time, they're most likely to leave when the time is up, and maybe accordingly, kind of set their night to it to be more responsible in that direction.
Yeah. I just, and that brings up another point in that area can get,
Yes.
it's that age group and.
But proper staffing, and you have, the monitoring of the supervisor and then the staffing as well, everybody in communication, which I try to have a good line of communication with my staff, because it's really important at night.
Well, that area in particular, this may be something we need to look at anyhow, so that we're not putting you and your staff in harm's way by putting them down there and getting in, into a confrontation with some intoxicated patron down there.
We have, like we stated earlier, we have a great police force, and my team is informed on how to reach and how to be proactive, and they're very knowledgeable as far as how to present the ticket and the right kind of dialogue too.
Yeah.
Just, we haven't had much confrontation in the field. We treat everybody with respect. I know you're stating someone that's intoxicated, but
Sure.
There's ways to deflect, and, so it's just trying to keep the enforcement alive and just be a presence more. It'll get word of mouth.
Sure. But I just, I don't want to start getting on any kind of basis where, we got that kind of thing going on. I think we need to be responsible too. If someone's trying to be responsible and takes a ride home because they know they've had too much to drink, I would like to see us get something going to where we don't have to deal with that. It's just my thoughts on it, but, and maybe 90-minute enforcement and 10 to 10
like you said, during
a.m.
the day,
to 8 p.m. or whatever. That,
We can do that.
that might be the easiest route to go. And then if a car's there overnight, just leave it. And that gives them till 10 o'clock the next day to get back and get it. So my thoughts.
Understood. Thank you.
Now, thank you, Jamal. Is that an administrative thing that
Yes.
you can
Yeah.
take care of, Robin?
Yes.
Can we get a consensus on that? How do y'all feel about that? Or is that something you even need a consensus on?
I think, it seems reasonable. It's, like you said, an administrative decision in terms of, because again, it's not we don't charge to
Right,
park
it's-
there.
Yeah,
So,
I don't have a problem with that.
good deal.
now, in terms of the proposed, what's your kind of,
I asked my questions, I'm fine with it.
I'm fine with it.
If you guys say that's,
It's in line with other communities.
Yeah.
I can't afford this place anymore.
I know.
well, we're keeping the hourly parking rate at $3 per hour. Just
We're
to be-
still the lowest parking rate around.
Yes, in our city, we are.
Yes, we are.
It's Parks and Recreation, again, removing specifically some sibling discounts that we were providing. I wasn't even aware until I read this that we were actually providing discounts. These are for our youth sports, our after-school programs, just a different rate that we were providing, and now we're looking to not provide such a discount. Summer camps, we've had the same rates for how many years, Jay? It's been a long time that we've not increased, and I know cities around us have also gone up to, these rates are a little bit higher, but it has been many years since do you remember the last time we?
Excuse me. I don't know that they've been raised since the new facility, so 6, 7 years. And then this year would be the first year looking at our after-school care program, our summer camp program, all on wait list right now. 15, 20, 30 kids, because, like the YMCA across the bridge can't staff, same with, So we have wait lists, and we actually raised the fees for the aftercare program last year and still have people calling to get in, so.
It's still the best deal going. I know of people that take advantage of it.
It is, and in our summer camp program, it includes field trips. We
Yeah.
don't make them charge, we don't charge them for the field trips that are daily, and every place that we go raise their rates, so we have to.
Yeah,
afford
and
It just
we're
trickles down.
going through that right now too. Jay, while you're here, I had a question, and that is taxes on this stuff. I'm seeing 6.5%.
Yeah, the rental rates, that,
Decreased.
it is
Under
decreased from
statute.
7 to
Is that?
6.5 over the last
That's-
5 years, I believe.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we
And that's
said the wrong-
just on rentals, it's not sales tax. It's-
Correct. Yeah, there's different rates for different types of services or products that you purchase. If you have an amusement, what's it, like certain types of amusement, like telescopes, for example, and people can put a quarter and view those. I know may have changed, but years ago that you took all your collection from the machines and you divided by 1.05. That's how you determine the sales tax on essentially those types of amusement. When you purchase drinks from a machine, the tax is also a little bit, it's like 6.8 something. So there's different rates. Not everything is 7%.
I did not know that. Because this says the 6.5 sales tax is included, so
Right, we have to
I
then
didn't know.
we then calculate and
Okay.
then provide that in our monthly.
Okey-doke, just asking.
I need to double check that. Between the two there, one that says it is included, one that says it's not
Yeah,
included.
it's-
It is not included. We charge it on top, so that needs to be. I'll look through that again with.
We'll make
So
sure that
that's,
correct. Yeah, it says it's included in hourly rates, but then
right,
a little further, the next one, it says it is not.
on,
Yeah.
on item 1.
So it shouldn't be. It should not be.
Is not.
And also looking for increases at the the pavilion rentals, as was brought up, the splash pad as well. So the pavilion rentals at both parks and at Archibald and Johns Pass Park, and then the splash pad, which is still a pretty good, for 2 hours at $100 is. And, I know there was one last week, we typically get a dozen a year if,
10 to 20 through the summer, and it's starting to pick up more as it becomes more obvious.
Is, real quick, is the pavilion in Johns Pass parking lot, is that going to be redone when they do the parking lot or anything?
don't think we,
Are we going to squeeze another year out of it? Okay. Thank you, sir.
athletic field rentals also increases again that have not happened, it looks like since 2016. And again, we'll correct the sales tax that's listed on there, as well as the hourly, field rentals for residents and for non-residents. Removing discounts, wedding permits, similar increases to $100 and the application fee. And we're taking away the deposits and just increasing the rates as opposed to holding money and then having to refund the deposit that was collected. And again, fees, just removing those facility fee that we're removing for large events. And again, we only have a few of these throughout the year, these large events where we really haven't been charging the facility fees. to
So
begin
a
with.
lot of these are the facility fee, basically, they say, hey, we want to rent the facility this day from this time to this time for a concert or whatever. And then after that, we were supposed to go to them and go, okay, so how many tickets did you distribute? Well, we did, so after the event was done, they had, packed up and left town. Then I had to go chase them to try to collect money. So it's counterintuitive. It's not worthwhile of anything. And it actually turned a lot of events away. So if anything and there was a roadblock, we took it out, essentially is what it was.
Okay.
And that's the same with, there was a larger event fee. We never really charged that because it didn't make any sense. But we've kept that one there just in case, but there's some other stuff that didn't make sense. Okay.
And the dumpster fees at events increasing to, I think that's related to sanitation, part of the sanitation fees that we levy. And we acquired barricades this year, so we do have barricades of any of the events that use our facilities want to use them. And we had table game lessons at one point, but I don't think we have them anymore. Public Works, again, really just some of the sanitation that we now have purchased, these size containers or the volume, the 1.5 cubic yards, and so that's why we're adding them to the rate schedule. So we have a 1, 2, and a 3 cubic yard container. Now we have a fourth option, the 1.5 cubic yard.
We've always had those, we just didn't have it in the fee schedule.
Yeah. So just correcting and updating that.
Correct.
And we will likely bring back, we'll have the discussion at the September workshop, but we'll bring back after that a change depending on what happens with recycling. So that'll be included and that'll be another ordinance change at that time. And I believe those were I'm sorry, Marina.
I added the enforcement part for,
Here's
this is specific to stormwater. So it's always been in the ordinance, but it's never been in the fee schedule, so now I can fine residents, business owners, concrete trucks for illicit discharges.
Yeah. They'll wash the back of their trucks out down the storm
Up to
sewer.
$500 a day.
So that's what this describes. And lastly, the marina, again, looking at slip rentals and others that haven't been updated since 2016. Again, there are dry storage, the rates per day, and I know Krabby looks at, we don't have that much in terms of competition with other cities because it's pretty much us, Gulfport, I think, Clearwater.
Gulfport,
Yeah, that's,
Gulfport, Clearwater, St. Pete.
St. Pete.
so what are we coming up and getting in line with everyone else?
We actually raised the slip fees last year.
I'm sorry.
And we pretty much went up 10% last year, and we did pretty much on the wet slips, another 10%. So that brings us up 20% from where we were. We're right in line with most everybody. We're right on the little bit lower end. Some of the ones like St. Pete or Clearwater by Marina Cantina, they offer a little more, things like that.
Yeah, they've got more facilities there too. How about the private marinas that are around?
I did some around like behind the Cambria here, they just changed, they pretty much went to $1,000 a slip. But like Bay Pines Marina, they're at $12, we're at $12.
Okay, all right, so,
Yeah, I mean, there's a long list of people, there's marinas are kind of disappearing, so slips are becoming harder and harder to get for people. So you could go charge more, but we want to kind of keep the people we have.
it's easier to
and they're
keep
good
the
people.
same people
Yeah,
in there,
absolutely.
basically year in, year out
Yes.
than,
Yeah, we got a good group, everybody gets along, and that's kind of hard to come by at sometimes. I've had difficulties with people not getting along with each other, so
Yeah.
I like to maintain what we have and just keep up with, utility costs and things like that.
how about the per foot charges on the dry storage?
Well, we went up some on that because we went to 26 foot plus last year. We raised that to 200 instead of being 140. And then we went up to about just under 160 last year, so now we're at, let's see, we're gonna go to dry storage 26 plus is 196. 26, which is gonna make it like, I think right at 220 or 210 with tax.
Okay. And that's,
And then we just raised the resident rate, that was another $10. So basically all the dry storage fees went up about $10 per. And then the biggest one was the transient dry storage is going from 20 a day to 30 a day. And then on holiday weekends, which is Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, it's gonna go to 40.
what page is that? I've been scuffling around through
That's
here.
on 117?
117, 118.
Wait, which one did you just mention?
That was on the
Kirby?
bottom of 117 was the transient dry
Yeah,
storage
here's
right
the
there.
transient.
The 30.
So they're listed on 117, 118,
Yeah, it's 2804, but with tax that comes to 30.
and 119.
So if you're staying the weekend, it's $90 basically, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
For dry storage?
For
just
a trailer and
just
your
to
boat
sit
to
in your
come
boat
in.
there
Yeah.
is 38
I mean, it
bucks,
costs
37, 38 a day?
Yeah, it costs, I've been around and it's hard to find places like that, especially that are so close to the beach. And with all the developments and things coming, there's a lot of people that bring in their boats with them. So I think we're a little on the lower end, on
Okay.
that. So I think it's something that we could definitely
You
increase.
know, let them bring them here. They buy fuel.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Bring them here and then those people recreate too. It's not just sitting there. They're here to use it. So they're buying beer, fuel, everything.
And you just got a bigger ice machine,
Yes, two.
too.
Plenty of ice.
Are they protected to where they're not gonna rust to pieces on us?
Yes, they have an awning and a cover. They're against the building. They're in good shape. We take good care of them. I do, because I like ice.
Yeah.
I need ice.
I know, but I saw you out there sitting in it the other day. That probably wasn't appropriate.
If I could fit in it, I would.
Thank you, sir.
Okay,
I think
thank you.
That's got it.
And then so those are the increases we're proposing with this item. And of course, then there's a copy of the ordinance that we would bring back at the September
I say bring
regular
it.
meeting for first reading.
I say bring it.
Okay.
Okay, it's good for me.
Thank you.
Okay,
And next.
okay, next is
You have item I.
yeah. Special magistrate lien at First Street East, Madeira Beach, case number 2020.1255. Andres Trey, is that correct?
Yes, the owner,
Trustee.
trustee.
Yeah. So you want to get a little background on this, Mayor?
Yes, please.
Okay, so this is a vacant lot. It had a failing seawall. The seawall consisted of a cement block wall. It was failing into Bogosiega Bay. The property owner was contacted to bring the property into compliance. It did not happen timely. It went to the special magistrate. She did not appear at the special magistrate hearing for some reason. She says in her letter that it was a direct result of the COVID pandemic. The special magistrate found the violation and imposed a fine of $100 a day for every day that the violation continued past the date of July 23rd, 2021. You remember that the code enforcement special magistrate has the ability on an initial fine to fine up to $250 a day. The city requested and the special magistrate granted $100 a day. This was not a life safety issue. The property owner took some time bringing the property into compliance. She did have to hire an engineer and a seawall company, and they did come in and they replaced the seawall. In your packet, you'll see the contractor and the amount of money that she paid for the seawall to be replaced. It's still obviously a vacant lot. She does not live there. Once she got it into compliance, an affidavit of compliance was issued and received. The lien established because of the fact it was not done timely got up to about $17,000. Subsequent to that, and frankly, during the process, I had received a phone call from the property owner, and I believe some emails where she was saying that she was working as hard as she could. She was financially strapped. So she had to borrow money to get this seawall repaired. But during the process, I told her, once you get it into compliance, then we can talk about possibly settling the lien. She did get it into compliance. She has made a $1,200 offer to settle the lien. That would cover all of the city's expenses for the prosecuting of the case. So I'm bringing that settlement offer to you. It is supported by city staff and the city manager. And so if that's acceptable, we'll put it on the regular meeting for consideration and approval. If it's not acceptable, obviously I'll need to go back to the property owner and talk to her about that. So that's the background.
Concrete block wall, that wall was put in probably in the 50s then.
Long time ago.
Yep. I'll tell you, I hate to see these come back to us where we have a high fee and then right and left, we reduce the heck out of them. I understand being in a tight financial situation to where it's putting a strain on her, and apparently you say she probably had to borrow money to replace the seawall.
She did mention that in her letter, and that is in the packet. I wanted to produce that so that you could see that, but in the letter, she said that she had to borrow money.
Then as valuable as that property is, why is she hanging on to it?
I have no idea.
None of my business, I guess, but.
She also brought to our attention in her letter that is in the packet at page 128 that we did have a storm drain that was barricaded on her property for about a year. I don't know, since Megan's not here, we can't address that, but she's saying that she did not complain about that for an entire year while it was barricaded, and she said that she wants to be a good steward. She was not complaining, and so I guess she wants you to let you know that, and maybe that will find some favor in your heart to reduce the lien down to $1,200. But she does say in the first sentence of the third paragraph, in closing, let me add that this has been an expensive repair that I had to borrow money to complete. So I just need direction on what you would like me to do, whether to bring it back for possible approval, and if not, maybe some direction as to the dollar amount that the commission would consider.
I hate to beat the person up, but at the same time, if they're borrowing money to replace a seawall on a vacant lot that is just sitting there, if I were struggling financially, it just does not make good economic sense for me to continue to hang on to the lot. Not in today's market.
And you say, I haven't been in as many cases as you have, so maybe I'm not as, I don't know. So many things happened during COVID that devastated folks, and if that had something to do with it, my first inclination is to allow it. I've seen so many horrible things happen to people because they couldn't get a permit because of the COVID. They couldn't get things for this that are completely legitimate. And maybe I'll learn after a couple of years, but my first inclination is to accept that offer.
I mean, she's sitting on a lot that's on the water that's, I'm assuming this is kind of a reverse pie-shaped lot. I didn't go by and look at. It's probably in here under the, but, okay, yeah.
The fine started in July and ended in January. And reading her email, she had to go through the engineering and then actually get the contractor out there, which was a delay. And then the permitting process was a delay. I'm of the opinion she's continued to move forward on trying to get the wall repaired. May have been slower than what we had hoped. Maybe she didn't start until the fine started, which was, why did we get to that point? I'm just talking through my thought process here. The city manager's recommendation and the city commission, they're recommending that we accept this offer. It'd be my opinion, just accept it and move on.
The problem I have is sitting there on, I would venture to say we're going to settle and the property's going to go on the market because she's got to settle to put it on the market.
Well, total due is $17,146.83. At $100 a day.
Yep.
So
Yes.
how many days that is? It's a.
And at that was reduced from potentially $250 a day or $2 a day?
No, the special magistrate could have fined up to $250 a day.
That's what I'm.
Yeah, he actually only fined $100 a day, and that was based upon our recommendation since it was not a life safety issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
There's 170 days.
Yeah, 167 days at $100 a day. The principal was 16,700.
I mean, why even wait this long to come to us? Or did it take this long for it to move through the?
I don't know the answer to that question, why she waited, but she did come into compliance on January 7th, and now we're in August. So.
Well, I can believe it would have taken that long simply to get permitting through the county. She would have had to have gone through the county, I think, for a seawall. So,
Well, it was January 7th, she had already come into compliance, so she's been in compliance for 7 or 8 months.
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So, yeah, because this is September 22nd, 2021, approved by zoning and planning. Commissioner Hudson, how do you feel?
As someone whose seawall contractors disappeared, I feel for her. But is there something in between? 1,200 seems insane.
I think so too. I had jotted down 2,000 simply because there's got to be some
penalty.
Some penalty for not coming into compliance. And I think on a $17,000 lien, to expect us to drop it to 1,600, I mean, how do we justify this to other people that are out of compliance? They're like, don't worry about complying because the city's going to reduce the heck out of it anyhow. So our fines mean nothing.
I see your point. I see your point. I mean, that's a big jump. So, I mean, what would make a statement? Let her know, okay, we're giving you a break, but not that much of a break.
Yeah, I mean, just to accept what she's offering, it's just like any other negotiation. Personally, I think we'd be foolish to accept that offer. That's, I mean, I know,
Well,
and I don't mean any disrespect to staff for saying that, but I think we have to let people know that getting a fine actually means something. And if we, let the horse out of the barn every time somebody comes and says they're going to take their horse away, and we say, okay, here you go. I don't know. I don't want to be the bad guy here, but I think that's just way too low to.
Do we have any history on the lot itself other than this seawall? I mean, the lot's a vacant lot. Is it always well-maintained? Is she a good neighbor?
Well, I don't think we've had any other code cases on.
I don't know where this is.
It's right behind Daiquiri Shack,
Oh,
First Ave East. It's probably $400,000 or $500,000 piece of property. And that's part of what I have a problem with people telling us they're having a financial issue and all, and you got a $500,000 piece of property sitting there, unimproved, just sitting.
What would make a statement? What figure would,
well, we wouldn't have to negotiate back. We would just say it's not accepted. Is that correct?
That's one option.
That's one way,
Another option is
or
if-
we can counter.
we
Or
could
you
just
can
counter
say,
say-
I think, Mayor, you threw out $2,000, but whatever your direction.
I think 2 is way fair. Maybe 5's a better figure, but
Or maybe a certain percentage of the overall fee, we're willing to reduce it. I don't know, I'm just throwing it out.
what's going to happen is that every time somebody has a big fine on them, they're going to come to us to settle because they know we're going to settle.
True.
well, she does have some contingencies. Again, the delay on the permits, the COVID, I mean, I agree it's low. But if we said 5,000, I still think that would make a statement, and yet it wouldn't be killing her.
I was going to go 3, and when you said 2, it surprised me.
I know, I'm not normally
He didn't mean it.
kind-hearted. You guys are being tough on me here now.
So it's a non-safety for all practical purposes. So you tend to say those are less, we can be less aggressive.
So when the special magistrate looks at code enforcement issues, there's a state statute under Chapter 162, and it says in determining the dollar amount of the fine, you look at a couple of different things. You look at the gravity of the violation. You look at what the property owner has done to bring the property into compliance timely, and then you also look at whether or not that there are any other code enforcement violations out there that the person's been involved in. And so with that kind of wrapping, those 3 things together, you look at, each particular case separately. But when I prosecute cases on your behalf before the special magistrate, when I know that it's a swimming pool that's not protected and there is a school next door, that is a big issue to me. Or we have electrical outlets that are hanging and it's in a rental unit. That's a big deal to me. Something like that, life safety issues, then we ask for a higher dollar amount of the fine. And the reason being, and less time to come into compliance. And that is just to put the pressure on them to get it into compliance much, much quicker. So this is not a life safety issue, but it needed to be taken care of. And so that's why we had suggested the $100 a day fine, and that's what the special magistrate decided to levy.
How does this get in front of the special magistrate? Just a building official happens to see that the wall's in disrepair, or is it, was it brought from a neighbor, or you don't know?
Yeah, I don't know the specifics, but it could be, those are
But
usually
a
the top
complaint
2.
is brought to the building department.
Correct, yes.
Whether it's internally or not.
To our code enforcement.
It could be proactive, where you're having the code enforcement officer on the next door neighbor dealing with, a
Yeah.
permitting issue, and he sees it, or she sees it.
I'm just trying to get a
It could be-
timeline. Is it something that, she may or may not live local? She may or may not knew the wall was in disrepair, or how badly it was. Next thing you know, you're getting notice that you're going to be in front of the,
Yeah, that's not how it works.
Okay.
She had the opportunity to fix it way before the notice of violation was issued and before the hearing actually took place. These things don't happen that quick. You get a courtesy notice, you get a stop by the deputy, you get a stop by the code enforcement officer, please take care of this. You get a phone call, you get an email, and eventually it gets to the point where they're not doing anything, and then we have to bring it to the special
Okay.
magistrate.
That's my question.
Yeah.
Now, this is a vacant lot, though, as I remember. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So it's not like she's living there. This is written down.
Correct.
Pinellas Park.
What's 5,000?
I feel comfortable with 5,000.
So when did he write the ticket? Or notify her?
I'm sorry, Commissioner, what was your question?
When did,
So when did he,
So the special magistrate heard
when-
the case on May 24th,
right,
gave her to come into compliance by July 23rd,
right.
and then the fine started after that. He signed the order on May 26th.
And what happens if we don't accept the offer? Or?
The lien just sits there until
And
Accumulates, I would think.
it accumulates
Even the-
interest.
it accumulates interest, that is,
Yeah.
it's not a daily fine anymore because it's in
Because,
compliance.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it would stay with the property until either the property owner pays it, or typically when the property would sell and they do the search for the records, they would find that there's a lien. And if the buyer, the buyer pays for the property and pays the lien, then we would be paid the full amount.
I would have to say then, for me, I could go 5,000. That's come down substantially from an already reduced fine from the special magistrate, from potentially $250 a day to down to $1 a day, $100 a day.
It's generous.
So I feel for the person, but we can't continue to accept, everyone feeling like they can come to us and they've got fines and we're going to settle for 10 cents on the dollar.
Okay, I'll go back to the property owner, tell her that you would be willing to accept $5,000, but that needs to come back before you at the next regular meeting. And then obviously, if there's any changes between now and then, you'll still have an opportunity to vote on it.
Okay.
But I'll let her know.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. Again, for those who are watching, there is no one in the audience, so there is no public comment. Next is Board of Commissioners meeting schedule.
So this is me. As you know, I'm retired from teaching, but I'm not retired from being a professional musician, and my work is frequently at night, and I've looked into the future at all the conflicts that I could possibly have. So I've put here a copy of some dates that I'd like you to consider. Those are dates that I have performances in the evening. that it could, and I think the 2023 meetings haven't been scheduled yet, but the ones in 2022 have. So what I'm asking is if we could consider having our meeting early on those days.
Okay.
You can have mine.
I have looked at this. We got an email on it. Commissioner Tagliarini, you were sworn in March. Between March and June, you missed 2 meetings. June, you missed the entire month.
Right.
Now you're coming to us with 8 more dates that you're wanting changed.
That's right.
I know occasionally that needs to be done, but this is habitual. And I think you need to decide whether or not you're a commissioner. Because every time we change a date, and it's happened twice since I've been mayor, that I've had to either be off for a day, that was when my brother died, or move a meeting when my niece graduated, because I'm basically her father now. And I think I missed a workshop once because I was out of town on personal business. But that's in 2.5 years that I've been in office. And to me, this is not acceptable to continue to change these meeting dates. Not only does it inconvenience the rest of the commission, but it inconveniences staff, all of the staff, and it inconveniences Mr. Trask, and he's got other things to do during the day. And we can't, on a regular basis, continue to change meetings. And my feeling is this isn't acceptable.
Just to be clear, it's not changing dates, it's changing times.
I know, but that inconveniences staff.
This isn't for, like in June when I went on vacation. This is my employment. This is my job. I think you'll agree that
And so is this.
I think you'll agree that $7,500 a year is not sufficient to employ me. And
You
if
know
I was a
what?
bartender, if I was a business owner, a restaurant owner, I would be working at night. And you're suggesting that a business owner on Madeira Beach whose legitimate job is in the evening couldn't be on the Board of Commissioners. Well, this is my job. And I was elected to this Board of Commissioners. And our charter has no specification for the time. And all I'm asking is that we move it to 2 o'clock on these dates. This is my employment, and I'm asking you to consider this.
This commission is also your employment. You ran for office. You wanted to be a commissioner. You said you were retired. Now, are you retired or are you a musician?
I'm a retired teacher and I am a professional musician.
Please let me finish.
Answering your question.
Are you a commissioner or aren't you a commissioner? You knew when the meetings were when you ran for commission.
And I also knew
This
that
is not acceptable to me.
I also knew that the meeting times were not in the charter.
Not acceptable to me. You know, we talk about transparency and being open to the public, and yet the public doesn't know from one day to the next when our meetings are. And Mr. Trask has to make it here. He has to steer around this too, as does staff. So I am not for changing meetings on a regular basis like this.
I would have to say if it was a one-off here or there, I'd be acceptable to, but I also work regular hours. So what you're asking for me is to not work from 2 to 5 on the dates so that you could work on those dates. And I don't believe that would be fair.
I
just don't like the meetings in the afternoon because then the public can't attend. But of course, they're not here most of the time anyway. So, can you knock it down to a couple of these or something?
It doesn't look like I have a choice, yeah. I mean, I'd take whatever you allow.
Well, we had 2 between March and June 1st. We had the month of June, and now you're coming to us with 8 more days. And to me, it's not acceptable. You decided to be a commissioner. If that wasn't going to fit into your schedule, then maybe you should have reconsidered running for commission. You can't come into office and then change the whole program and expect everybody to revolve around you. It's just not going to happen.
Again, I'm not changing the program, it's not in the charter.
It's not in the charter, but in the city charter, within 90 days after the election, the commission is mandated to put their meeting procedures together. That's the, it's in
These
the.
jobs weren't
yeah.
off, the way it works as a musician, the jobs aren't offered like a year in advance.
Yeah. And it
I just got these.
And it can be changed. I mean, the handbook.
But at that time, when the handbook is reviewed. And I think just a question really for Clara, because looking at the schedule, on December the 14th, it's either a regular meeting or a workshop. What do we typically do in December? Have one meeting or have both meetings?
Let me look at my calendar. In December, every year, the commission usually moves up their workshop because of the Christmas holidays and the New Year holidays. But that's up to the commission. What they did last year was didn't have a workshop in November or December, but they had it on December the 1st. So the December, and I think it was earlier, so the November, December was combined to December 1st. So you do something like that
I
to
like that idea.
accommodate Commissioner Taglerini, or
December's always, it's nice to be able to have an more open schedule to visit family.
that would
So
be,
I think, so for,
but the 14th is, December the 14th of 2022 is our regular meeting, but
And the other's December 28th.
would be
And
the
I think
workshop.
yeah, for the workshop, and I think we did,
We were not going to have it on the 28th, it sounds like.
I don't
it
think
got
we,
moved.
Shaking head, that's why.
well, I don't think we did. I got no problem as far as my schedule goes with the 28th, but I just can't see us doing this on a regular basis. Like Commissioner Kerr said, he works during the day, so he's supposed to change his schedule, his work schedule, to come in to accommodate you. Is that fair to him?
Okay, so
Is this a rhetorical question?
No, it's a question. Is that fair to him?
I have a job too.
Yes, you had one
We don't have
when
one.
you ran for commission. For me, it's a no.
So it appears we don't have a meeting on the, just to clarify, on December 7th. So the 14th, Wednesday, December the 14th would be the regular meeting.
Unless you
We
wanna
would
move
not
it
have a
up.
workshop in the month of December. The workshop in November would be as regularly scheduled on Wednesday, moved up a week due to the Thanksgiving week, so it would be on Wednesday, November the 16th, would essentially be the workshop November, December, as Clara stated, sort of combined. So just to clarify that. So we will remove this workshop listed here, Wednesday, December the 14th. That'll be just our regular meeting.
Yeah.
So that clears up.
No, that doesn't clear
conflict.
up, doesn't clear up anything.
Well, December 7th.
Well, December
Gone.
7th was on Commissioner's list, that's all. Just wanted to be.
Okay, December 7th, we have no meeting anyhow.
Right, there was nothing scheduled.
December or November 9th, we have a meeting.
That's a regular meeting.
That's our
October
regular
12th,
meeting.
December 9th, and,
Yep.
I'm sorry, October 12th, November 9th, and December 14th are regular meetings.
Yep, so the 7th is not a meeting, so that's irrelevant. So,
So,
Mr. Trask, do you have any other week evenings?
I'm sorry.
no, I'm sorry, but I don't think we need to be moving Mr. Trask around like this. I'm not going to.
Okay.
You know, this is getting habitual, and we're not going to do it habitually. I said months ago when we discussed this, occasionally it's going to happen. All of us are going to have it occasionally. None of us should have it habitually, and I'm totally against this.
I think having it in the day and moving it is wrong. Sorry.
As a workshop, we're not like taking a vote on this
Right.
tonight.
Right.
We're just giving our opinions.
Yeah.
yeah, the schedule will remain until such time as the commission makes a change and approves it at a regular meeting.
Yeah, we can discuss it at the September meeting,
Okay.
at the regular meeting.
Oh, you want to, okay.
We'll add it to the,
We'll add it to the September
Add it to the
14th
res-
agenda.
Yeah,
Okay,
and then we'll vote on it then.
okay,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
With that, having no more business, this meeting is adjourned at 9:39 PM.